Just don't tell me using the Hoops hype.
Blog Talk Radio.
This is NBA Unplugged, brought to you by theprobasketballtalk.com. It's time to talk hoops with Jacob Noble and James Bucklin.
Indeed, it is time to talk hoops with Jacob Noble and James Bucklin. This, of course, is James Bucklin here reporting for another high-profile season preview edition of NBA Unplugged, brought to you by theprobasketballtalk.com. Like I said, I am James Bucklin. With me, as always, is
Jacob Noble, the guru, the
he's
founder.
going to introduce himself, apparently.
Well, we've already had an introduction. We're doing a second introduction, and we're just filling time right now. But we got a great show, as we said.
Well,
we're
don't
gonna
tell him that.
Oh, I'm going to tell him everything. There's no holds barred here. But, we got a fantastic show today. We're going to talk a lot about season previews coming up in the next few weeks. Because now we're, 7 weeks away from the season
It's
starting?
getting pretty close.
It's getting closer than you think, ladies.
Yeah. I'm going to wet my pants in anticipation.
But so last week we did the Atlantic Division. We had a ball. We had great guests. We had Jessica Camarato on with us.
Mo Hamilton
was great.
Stone Mo
Hamilton. And then we finished it off with
Barstool Philly guy. Come on, you don't remember this?
I don't remember this. It's been a lot.
Now, today, Jacob, we're going ocean to ocean, from Atlantic to Pacific. We're going to cover the Pacific Division with another great Gary Slater guest.
We got a whole Gary Slater guest. This time we're going to have Eric Pincus from Hoopsworld join us. He's going to cover the Clippers for us. He knows a lot of teams. We're going to hammer him down with the Clippers. That's where he's based in L.A., so we're going to get him on the Clipper side of it. And then as well, who else are we going to have?
Well, I believe we have Rey Rey from the No Look Pass, a very popular blog, a very popular Twitter account. A lot of people follow, a lot of people conversate with him. We have done that in the past as well.
Yep, he's been on both of our shows, both the Bozos of Basketball and NBA Unplugged in the past, and he's an avid Spice Girls fan, so if you have any Spice Girls questions, feel free to tweet us during the show. We'll ask away.
Yeah, I remember I talked to him about the Spice Girls on the Bozos of Basketball. He was very reluctant to speak about the Spice Girls. I remember this specifically because I was told, I believe by you, hey, ask him about the Spice Girls. And he was like, oh, well, I don't really like him. I just made one little comment about him one time on Twitter, and everybody started asking me about it. So
do I have to pull up his Facebook wall and see the amount of comments? And I hear he's pretty good at karaoke, too. But we're here to talk about basketball. And then I guess our last guest, if he can get through TSA in time. So if he's not here, blame your local government. But he's going to try to get here. He's flying. He's traveling. And that's going to be Michael Schwartz from the Valley of the Suns, who covers the Suns basketball team for True Hoop ESPN. So we got some big guys on today.
Yeah, I mean, if he doesn't make it, it's only the Suns, right?
It's only the Suns. Hey, I have a lot of Jermaine O'Neal and Michael Beasley questions to ask, so I hope he comes on, because if not, you and I are just going to be making a fool of those two guys without him.
Yeah, I am going to ask him a lot of specifics about Goran Dragic. I hope he's done his homework.
I'm sure he's done his homework with Goran. Goran's been there, left, and came back, so,
Right.
Goran's been around the block a few times. But, no, we got a great show. We're going to start off with Eric Pincus around 6:10. He's going to call in. And so until then, we'll kind of just set up the Gary slate with the specific team. There's a lot of changes around. Obviously, the Lakers are probably the most exciting team, but we'll save all that stuff for when Rey Rey hops on here and talk about the team that's probably going to win the next 6 championships by most NBA fans. Sorry, LeBron, but the Lakers are going to win the next 6 championships. But, I like the Clippers in this division as well. I think they improved drastically last year, more than I thought they would, and now they're gonna one more year under their belt. And this is the year where those teams that form together in the lockout season have a full off season to get together.
Yeah, I still see the Clippers as sort of a plateaued team, to be honest with you. They lost some guys, they gained some guys. In the end, they have just about the same amount of talent level. I don't think they've added enough really to get to the next level in the West. I do think that they have a whole buttload of talent, and that they certainly have the potential to be one of those top, 3-4 teams out in that Western Conference. Will it happen? That remains to be seen. But they've got, arguably the best point guard in the league, Chris Paul, who's phenomenal, as we all know. Blake Griffin, still a rising superstar. He's not just what you saw in the dunk contest. The kid can play. He's a 2010 player. He's very high energy, very high profile, very high flying. It's a very exciting player, Blake Griffin. And you've got some other pieces like Caron Butler and DeAndre Jordan who are nice players on that team. So they certainly could make some noise. Can they compete with Oklahoma City and Los Angeles Lakers? That I'm not so sure about.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. And then we also got two other teams we haven't mentioned yet in this podcast, which is the Sacramento Kings, soon to be Virginia Beach Kings, soon to be Seattle Kings, soon to be wherever they're going to move Kings. We got our buddy Nate on the website who's been following this story in and out. He's a Kings fan, so this is very true to his heart, and it'd be a shame to see a second team leave a city in the NBA in the past 5 years. And then you got the Golden State Warriors who made some moves last year, and a lot of people forget about Andrew Bogut. So we're going to talk a little bit about David Lee and Andrew Bogut, how they'll come together, and we'll talk a little bit about Stephen Curry's ankles, because that seems to be a topic every single year.
Problem.
What's up with those ankles? So it's very interesting to see what's going to happen along the lines.
Do you want to dive into these crap teams now, or are we waiting for Eric Pincus?
Well, we got some filler time in between there, and Eric's going to be here in about 4 minutes. So I think we can fill out because, from the 6:30 to 7 range, we can spend about 10-15 minutes on those, as you quote, crap teams.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I was a little insensitive there. Non-playoff teams, is that what they like to be called?
Well, if we're doing non-playoff teams, we technically have 3 non-playoff teams in this division, where we were a little spoiled last week because we had 4 playoff teams, and as I heard from one of our good friends, Brian Geltzeiler, is he's writing an article on why the Toronto Raptors are going to make the playoffs. Yes.
Make the playoffs.
Make the playoffs.
Now, I know that the Eastern Conference isn't exactly lighting the world on fire with talent.
Well, the Heat's lighting the world on fire with talent.
Right, exactly. The talent in the conference is very focused on a few different teams, so it's not exactly deep as far as parity goes. Toronto Raptors, though, I think that might be a stretch. I'm interested to read that piece by Geltzeller.
Yeah, and I don't think we've ever done this, but there is a caller in queue. And let's take a quick snapshot and see who this caller is and say hi for a couple minutes.
I know exactly who it is.
Well, hello, caller.
Yeah, hi. Is this the Bozos of basketball?
No, it's not the Bozos of basketball. We apologize.
All right, I'll call that back. Bye.
Was that the Bozo?
That's a big fan of the show. He calls in every week.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, he was probably just seeing. And if you don't know, I'll give you a shameless plug right now. Last night, we had another episode of the Bozos of Basketball. You can hear me on that show every Wednesday at 7:30. That was probably just one of our regular callers who wanted to talk to us, and unfortunately it was NBA Unplugged tonight. But I'm sure he'll call back in next Wednesday.
And speaking of it, we'll do another little shameless plug. The Bozos had a fantastic episode last night. They did a lot of top fives. Highly suggest you go listen to that show. I listened to it today, and
it's on the site, right?
It is on the site. Well, it's on the site to the right. I don't know if either you Bozos put a post up for people to directly see it. So
right.
we'll work on that. But I did listen to it today. I did have to change my underwear a few times.
I believe I linked to my Twitter page, James_Bucklin, where you can listen to that on blogtalkradio.com.
Yeah. So, we're going back to the Pacific Division, and...
I wanted to talk about your undergarments.
I said I changed them twice of peeing my pants from laughing so hard. So, that's that. And just so everybody knows, we got a new microphone in here, so hopefully we sound nice and crisp. And that's Ben Kinay texting us saying thanks for the Bozo plug, because he had a ball doing it. And so we got a couple more minutes here with this team, and the Clippers are interesting because I was down on them last year. I didn't think they would accomplish what they did. They beat the Memphis Grizzlies in a series, which kind of shocked me. I thought Memphis was going to be the sleeper team out west. I thought Memphis would get through and go to the conference finals again.
I figured it'd be a dogfight like it was. I still see those teams as pretty even. I think Memphis has a lot of talent, but we're not talking about the Grizzlies today. This is the Pacific Division.
This is Pacific
podcast. I'm really excited to ask Eric about Lamar Odom. I know that he's a big story because of who his wife is and sort of the crying he did on the Stephen A. Smith show and that whole situation. I'm interested to see if he thinks that he'll be more comfortable now that he's back in cushy in L.A. where he likes to be.
He's going back to Cali. So, Lamar Odom's an interesting player, as Brian likes to call him, the human Swiss Army knife.
Swiss Army knife.
Because he can do everything. And the thing about Lamar Odom that frustrates me is he can do everything, but he just doesn't want to do everything.
Right. It's up to his discretion, and some days he'll have it, some days he won't. I don't know. I've always liked him as a player, though. Like you said, Swiss Army knife. He can shoot from the outside. He's a good big man player, as you saw in the Olympics. The last one before this one, he even played a little center on that team.
Yeah.
He can really do it all out there. He rebounds, he passes. It's just whether he wants to or whether he doesn't want to at that time. And I'm thinking now that he's back in L.A. and he doesn't have to be cooped up in Dallas where, he couldn't sit on the sandy beach every day with the Kardashian by his side. Maybe now he'll be a little more comfortable, maybe try a little harder.
Yeah, we'll hope so. So right now, just so everybody cares for my reading of the day, or I should say reading of the week, I'm reading the art
of... Oh, is this the Jacob Noble book club we're doing now?
We got a book club.
You got a little Oprah in you all of a sudden?
Well, no Oprah. But anyways, I'm reading The Art of a Beautiful Game by Chris Ballard from SI, and he's talking about rebounding, and a lot of people talk about rebounding, and it's you have to want to do it.
It's all about rebounding?
No, it talks about the beauty of the game. It talks about shooting. He's got Ray Allen quotes in there, Steve Kerr, all the great shooters of the time. He talks about rebounding with Dwight Howard and the guys like Ben Wallace and Rodman who are underscored. Yep. And it's basically just it's the book highlights the game of basketball for all those people who use cliches like, oh, they're overpaid and they don't try hard and the game's slow and they don't hustle, but there's just so much to the game, and this book tries getting that out of you to look at the little things that these guys do, the amount of training that goes into their footwork, their handwork, the plays they have to do, the little things that the regular human eye won't catch. But if you're around the game and you study the game, you'll see the little things that these athletes do or don't do. And it does mention a bozo favorite in there, Eddie Curry in the rebounding chapter.
Oh, yeah.
So, but without further ado, we have our main man, Eric Pincus from Hoopsworld.com joining us today. How you doing, Eric? How are we doing, Eric?
Excellent. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thanks for joining us. So, we have you on here with the Clippers, and I got to mention that you're from Hoopsworld, and you do all the salary stuff, which I got to say, I can't imagine how many hours you spend doing that stuff. It must be mind-boggling.
Yes, it's time-consuming, to say the least.
So I guess we'll start with the most, important question of the Clippers team, and that is their all-star point guard, Chris Paul. What kind of update on his injury status do you have? I believe he has a surgery on his thumb from the Olympics.
Yeah, it's not a major injury. He had to have surgery on it, and he's speaking to people close to the Clippers. They say he'll be fine. And teams tend to downplay injuries, so it's possible that I'm just being, spun a little bit, but I think he's fine. They said that it was supposed to be like an 8-week time frame, but that he would probably be good to go in about 4 to 6 weeks. They were just conservative. So the Clippers are pretty confident that he and both Blake Griffin will be fully ready to go and healthy and strong for training camp.
Yeah, you hope so, because what you just said made me think of Kevin Garnett in 2009, and we thought he'd come back any day, and then all of a sudden it turned out to be a year-long injury. So, for the Clippers' sake and Chris Paul's sake, I hope it is an 8-week injury. And his worst case, Kobe played with a broken finger. I mean, he can play with a broken thumb, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's tricky when you're a point guard and you're handling the ball, especially someone like Chris Paul who handles it as often and as long as he does. But I heard it. I mean, you got to understand, he went and played another game internationally with the injury, and he actually went back to I think in Los Angeles. I'm not sure where, but he played in a little tournament, a casual tournament with the injury as well. So it wasn't debilitating, and it's not anything serious, or at least I don't expect it to be.
Yeah, and he's a warrior. Even if it is anything that could put him in a day-to-day situation, I'm sure he's leaning towards the I'm going to play category as far as that goes. And Eric, you mentioned how often Chris Paul's handling the ball. One thing I wanted to talk to you about was the addition of Jamal Crawford and how Jamal's going to translate into this team. Chris Paul is a guy who likes to have the ball in his hands a lot. Jamal Crawford's tended to be a ball stopper at times. I was wondering if you had any insight on, how these guys plan on working together and how you see them meshing as teammates.
Well, Paul is pretty experienced playing with guys of all different kinds of caliber and willingness to shoot. He's played with J.R. Smith, who's been known to be a black hole as well. And it's not as much as Jamal Crawford is a ball stopper. He's a shooter. He's a shot jacker. I think ball stopper, recently you might say Andrew Bynum has been that, where the ball going to the post, and it's not necessarily coming out with a pass. Kobe Bryant on the perimeter can sometimes get the ball and just hold it. But I think Jamal, he's quick to shoot, and so I don't think he'll stop the flow of their offense. I just think that Chris is going to know that when he gives the ball to Jamal, it's probably going to go up, either in a shot or he's going to drive it to the basket. So that's part of it. I know that Crawford is a high-scoring guard. He's not necessarily the most efficient guard, but he's a good offensive weapon for someone like Chris Paul to have because he wants to be a setup guy, and you need guys to set up and guys who are willing to take the shots, and that's certainly Jamal.
Staying on Jamal Crawford, you bring up an excellent point because I think he's going to be excellent off the bench for the Clippers. I think, his ability to create his own shot and to, go on a scoring streak as you want your sixth man to do is very interesting. But, I also like James's point that he brought up is that, Crawford needs the ball in his hand to be effective. And there were a couple of, discussions in the offseason about who the Clippers are going to go after. I know they had interest in Ray Allen. They let Nick Young walk for basically nothing. To me, I would have, with this team, I would have rather have had a Ray Allen or Nick Young, because those are guys that catch and shoot better, in my opinion, than Jamal. I think Jamal's a better scorer than both of those. So I want to take your opinion on, Jamal Crawford versus either Ray Allen or Nick Young for this squad.
Well, when it came to free agency, Ray Allen really wasn't as interested as the Clippers had hoped, and he's someone they've had an eye on for years, and they have made efforts and overtures to acquire. But it's a two-way street, and if he's not as receptive, then you go with the guy who is. Now, Nick Young is who he is. I don't think he's a complete basketball player. He's a lot of fun to be around. He can light it up. He saved the Clippers more than once in the playoffs, specifically against the Grizzlies. But you don't necessarily know what he's going to do in a given night. And there are a lot of times where he's just not necessarily impactful. He just kind of is there and shoots up 2 for 7 and doesn't pass the ball at all and can defend a little bit, but isn't a noteworthy defender. With Crawford, you know what he's going to do a bit more, I think. He's more of a mature player. He's someone you know exactly. You know the shots are going to go up. But he's also not necessarily a great defender, but he's a guy who can pass the ball. He's not a point guard by any stretch, but he can play the position if need be. And he's older than Nick. He's more seasoned. He's not Ray Allen, and Ray Allen, certainly in his prime, is one of the best catch-and-shoot players in history, him, Reggie Miller, and a few others at that position. But if he's not available to the Clippers, then what do? You go to the next guy. And I think that Crawford over Young makes sense, not necessarily from an age perspective, but from overall fit as far as overall caliber of player. And certainly Nick Young has upside. He can grow into it. But I don't think we've seen a lot of growth from Nick. I still think he's very much the player he came into the league as.
Yeah, and staying with the guards here, Eric, I'd like to tie Chauncey Billups and Eric Bledsoe into this conversation. Is Billups your starting two, and where do the minutes come for Eric Bledsoe? You got to get that kid on the court. He was electric last season.
Yeah, absolutely. Billups has vowed to be back by opening night, but it may have been a little bit optimistic. He's recovering from the Achilles injury. From my understanding, they're targeting November. He's targeting October, naturally. And could it extend into December? I think you're closer to, as you mentioned, the Kevin Garnett injury, where it could be one that lingers versus the Chris Paul situation, where I don't expect it to linger. But Billups, he expects to start. And he expects to start alongside Chris Paul. And so I think they're going to go with that when he's available, which would put Crawford on the bench. And it's really, if you think about the decision-making power and clutch shooting between Paul and Billups, I mean, that's pretty. That would have made a huge difference last year. Naturally, he wasn't available to them, but behind them is Eric Bledsoe, who's a kid who is just an athletic dynamo. He's not a true point guard, but he's one of those guys who is similar to Westbrook in that you give him the ball in the perimeter and he's going to find a way to overpower and get to the basket. He's not nearly as good as Westbrook at this point anyway, but he's the same kind of player. Not a true point guard, but can pass. He's not as good a passer as Westbrook. And the Clippers are very dedicated to getting him minutes. So I would imagine that behind Paul would be Bledsoe. There'll be minutes for Bledsoe at the 2 guard alongside Paul. And then Vinny Del Negro, the coach, really loves to play a 3-guard set. He loves 3 guards. That's just kind of his modus operandi. And so you could see a lot of Crawford at the 3 with Bledsoe in the backcourt or Billups. So you're going to see a lot of combinations. We could see Paul, Bledsoe, Crawford. We could see any combination. Paul, Billups, and then you also have Quan Butler at the 3. They
can't forget about him.
And they have Willie Green as well, who he'll play if there's opportunity, but not necessarily a priority. So they have more guards than they need, but Vinny Del Negro loves guards, loves to have multiple guards, and so they built the team around what the coach likes, and now it's just a matter of figuring out how to get the players minutes. And I think with Billups' injury and then bring him on slowly, I think it'll work itself out initially, and by the time you think playoffs, whoever's the most effective and whatever lineups they found that really work is what they'll go with.
Now that's interesting you say that Coach Del Negro likes to go with 3 small guards, because when you have a guy like Lamar Odom on your team, along with Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan, and this is something I thought the Lakers didn't do enough when they had Lamar Odom, is I would like to see the Clippers go big with Lamar at the 3, Griffin, and DeAndre Jordan, especially, when they play teams like the Lakers who are going to have, Metta World Peace, Dwight Howard, and Paul Gasol. I think they can match up better if they, get that size in there and kind of bully teams around, because Chris Paul is good enough where he can handle the backcourt. What's your take on that, and do you see the Clippers doing some big lineups, depending on the matchups?
Well, I think that's the key word is matchups. Lamar Odom is not a 3 anymore. He hasn't been a 3 for a long time in the NBA. As far as defensive speed, quickness, he's a bigger player. He's a little bit slower than he used to be. So I think he's a power forward. And the biggest strength in his run with the Lakers was really his rebounding, and I think the Clippers are a team that needs rebounding. However, if you're talking about Metta World Peace, well, Metta's not fast at all, and that's someone certainly that Lamar can match up with at the 3. So if you're talking about Rudy Gay, that becomes a little more problematic. I know Manu Ginobili, if he's playing 3, that's a guy, even as Manu's a bit older now, is very difficult for someone like Lamar to keep up with. LeBron's kind of a 3-4, so you could certainly try to put Lamar and see if he can guard a guy like LeBron, but you just run into all kinds of matchup questions. And so, yes, they can go big. I expect at the end of games in most cases, for DeAndre Jordan to be on the bench and for Lamar Odom and Blake Griffin to finish out as the big man tandem. I don't think it matters who's center. That'll be matchup driven, and you could argue that Lamar would be center with Blake, but they played a lot of Blake at center last year as well, and they've gone small. And it just whoever's guarding whoever is whatever position you are. If you're guarding the center, then you're the center. If you're guarding the power forward, you're the power forward. I don't think it needs to be defined by Del Negro and what he does. DeAndre can help the team by becoming a little bit more consistent as a rebounder, avoiding fouls and blocking shots. It doesn't necessarily matter that he doesn't score a lot, but he needs to be a better overall team defender. And he's growing as a player. I just think that the flexibility of a more mobile lineup with Lamar and Blake will be where Vinny goes.
Right, and on the subject of Lamar Odom, we'll promise not to ask any questions about socialites or reality shows or anything like that. I'd like to know more about where you're seeing his effort level going into the season. It seems that now that he's back in L.A., maybe he'll be more comfortable. I don't think he really liked it in Dallas. Now that he's back in L.A., he's back at the team where it started it all with him. Do you think he's going to show a little more effort than he did in Dallas? I would hope so. And what exactly do you see coming from the effort level of Lamar Odom coming into the season?
Well, Lamar's never been a guy, from my experience, to work extremely hard over the summer. And he kind of works himself into shape in training camp. And so some of that is usually in October, he's not the guy he's going to be in March or April. And as you get older, it's harder and harder to do that, and you're more prone to get injured or just not to get to the point you want to be. Last year we had the lockout, and so the off season was extended for Lamar. So there was a longer period of time that he was out of shape. So by the time it was time for camp, he was not really ready to go, and that was part of the reason why the Lakers decided to move on. They didn't think he was going to be. They didn't think he was going to come near the year that he had when he was Sixth Man of the Year for them. Now you have to remember, he went to the Olympics. Played with Team USA, or I don't think it was Olympics that year. He was playing with Team USA that year, and so was in great shape because he worked out and played all summer. So by the time he got to the Lakers, he was an oddity in great shape, so he had a great year. It was arguably one of his best years. That wasn't what he was going into after the lockout. That's not the guy who Dallas got. They got someone who was out of shape and was an emotional wreck from the whole trade, and he had some personal issues going on. He seems to be more grounded. He seems to have put all this behind him. He declined to play in the Olympics, although he was invited because he wanted to stay in Los Angeles and work out at the facility with the Clippers and get himself to where he needs to be. So now we'll find out in about a month when training camps open how much time did he really put in to get himself back to where he needs to be, because he's saying all the right things. He's saying he wants to get some redemption and prove that last year was just an anomaly, and that's really on him as far as the work he's putting in now, so that by the time that they get to training camp, to opening night, he's where he needs to be as far as health and stamina, and if he's motivated, he can have a very big impact on this team.
Yeah, and they don't call it the off season for no reason. He takes that very serious, I guess. Going on to something that kind of interests me is the move of amnestying Ryan Gomes. Now, not knowing him personally, but knowing his career, he's been a good locker room guy. He does whatever coaches ask. He'll do whatever is needed for a team, and he's not making a lot of money. So can you kind of, give us some insight on why the Clippers decided to amnesty a guy like Ryan Gomes? And, was it just to free up a little cap space to go out and get a couple guys like Ronnie Turioff and Ryan Hollins?
Well, it becomes a complex equation, and Gomes was a great locker room guy, even as he fell out of the rotation. They brought him in when they tried to get LeBron that year, when LeBron was a free agent, and instead ended up with Ryan Gomes, which was obviously not Plan A. It was the best guy that they could get on a short-term deal. They gave him 3 years. They gave him one too many. They paid him about $4 million a year, and gradually the team evolved, and he just was no longer needed. So there was nothing he could do for them on the floor. And other than being a locker room guy, $4 million isn't really worth it. Now, when you look at the math of it, the Clippers gave their full mid-level exception to Jamal Crawford, which, under the new rules, locks them in at a hard cap of $74 million. The best way for them to get out of that pickle and to be near that hard cap is to do amnesty. And what that did is that took them out of the tax. It gave them plenty of room to work with as far as adding players and improving their team without having to worry about hitting a limit where they can't spend a single dollar more. And of course, the Clippers don't have a reputation as a big spender, but that's really an old reputation dating back to their days at the sports arena, which is before 2000. By the time they got to Staples Center, the economics changed for the team. They have a much higher income, and they're willing to spend what they bring in. They're not going to spend excessively. They're not the Lakers as far as spending, but they are willing to put money into the team, and they're trying to field a team that they believe will win right now. And certainly, I don't know if they've achieved that or not, but they're trying to keep Chris Paul long-term, and holding on to Ryan Gomes and paying him $4 million and then limiting the team's flexibility to improve didn't make sense. They had the opportunity to amnesty him, and credit to Donald Sterling, who was willing to pay $4 million for someone not to play. I think that's a first. Usually it's on the other end. Historically, they've gone the other direction, and I'm impressed that they made the move. It was the right basketball move. And so that's all. If you're a fan of the Clippers, that's all you want, is you want your team to be making the moves based on what's best for the team on the floor and not what's best for the owner's wallet. And even though that money came off the cap and away from the tax, they still have to pay him $4 million. So it was the right move, and I was impressed that they made it.
Yeah, and I'm pretty surprised that. So we've just went about 15 minutes of Clipper talk and barely mentioned Blake Griffin. I'd like to know if you see any improvements possibly coming in his game coming into the season. I'm sure there's plenty of room to improve defensively, especially for Blake. Obviously, the athleticism is there, scoring ability is there, the rebounding's there. Where can he improve, and do you see this season as a time for him to sort of take that next step into being an upper echelon power forward in the league?
Well, it's been difficult for Blake in the sense that he's gotten injured twice and has had to miss significant time. He missed his whole rookie year, his initial rookie year, with a knee injury. He injured the knee again this summer and actually had to have surgery. So while he'll be ready to go and is supposed to be already near or at 100%, it's hard over the summer to really develop defensively because you're not playing necessarily against equal caliber players. You're playing pickup games. You're working out with a coach. Whatever you're doing, it's hard to really emulate the kind of moves you're going to have to make to improve defensively. It can be done, and there are certainly drills to improve how a player defends. But he's someone who needs to work on his free throw shooting. That's been his biggest flaw on the floor, and it doesn't make a lot of sense because he can shoot. He's not a tremendous shooter, but he definitely let it get into his head a bit, and he had some moments where he didn't have the confidence in his free throw. He also needs to hit that mid-range shot or even a long-range 17, 15 to 20-foot jumper because teams are starting to play him as a guy who will always go to the basket. Now, if he could just turn and as the player is giving him space to prevent the drive, just rear up and hit a jump shot. Now, he took a lot of those, but he didn't make as high a percentage as he needs to. If he can hit 3 or 4 or 5 percentage points higher, it changes the game completely for him because now you have to get closer. If he's hitting those shots, and you got to think Karl Malone. Malone used to be the same kind of guy, a guy who needed to get closer to the basket and couldn't shoot, couldn't hit free throws. And I would really say that so far their careers are on a parallel track. If Blake can nail the free throws, because Malone became a great free throw shooter, and then become automatic on that jump shot, well, how do you stop him? Because he's going to drive right by you, or he's going to pull up and hit a jump shot. And wow, I mean, if he can get there, and I don't know if he can, but if he can, then he's going to be a beast. And defensively, he's not there yet. That's his biggest weakness. He's certainly not a guy who's going to get stops. He doesn't have very long arms. But he's strong, and fundamentally, I think he can learn to improve. And the injuries have set him back a little bit, but there's still plenty of room to grow there.
Now, you've given us plenty of time, Eric, and I got 2 quick questions for you, and one serious and one not so serious. So I'm going to just rattle them off for you and before we let you go. So the first one is, what is the Clippers' ceiling this year? How far do you expect them to go? What would be like, overachieving? What would be underachieving? And my second question is, without Swaggy P, who is the most stylish Clipper on the team currently?
Yikes. Well, I mean, I'm going to go with Lamar right off the bat. I mean, he's a guy who likes to wear the threads, and he's not afraid to put on something funky.
Date the Kardashian
for
crying out loud.
Easily Lamar. Now, as far as expectations for this team, I look at it in a few ways. One, you could say, well, they got Grant Hill, he's 40 plus or right around there. Lamar coming off of a terrible year. Jamal Crawford didn't have a great year. You can argue from one light that, yeah, they made a lot of moves, but did they make the kind of moves that are overwhelmingly pushing them into the elite? I don't know if they have. I don't think it's as bad as I just described. I think that Lamar will bounce back. I think Crawford is a much better fit here than he was in Portland, and Grant Hill is the kind of veteran leadership the team really needs. I mean, they have the athletes. You have Blake Griffin. You have DeAndre Jordan. You have Eric Bledsoe. You need guys who really understand the game, and it's the balance of veteran leadership and experience with athleticism that is really how you thrive. You can't have too much of either. If your team is too old and you're not athletic, you may know how to play the game, but the body can't do it. Or if you're all athletes, I mean, every young team is athlete, but they don't know what the heck they're doing. So Clippers have a really nice balance. The question is, are they going to be able to stay healthy? If they can, and if the pieces mesh, they have potential to be the 3rd best team, I think. I don't see them quite as the Thunder, but they're not that far behind the Thunder. And last year they were actually a pretty good matchup. Lakers are going to be real tough with who they have. I thought the Lakers last year were slightly better than the Clippers. I think the gap is a little bit wider now, not dramatically, but the Grizzlies are a team I think that the Clippers can be better than. The Nuggets, the Spurs is a tough one. It's a matchup that the Clippers would probably like to avoid, even though I think that the Spurs, they're always on the border of being too old. They have gotten younger. I don't know how big a threat they are this year, but the Clippers could get to the Western Conference Finals. I don't see them further than that. I see them in the second round. I don't see them getting swept again as they did last year. I don't know how much further they can get from second round to just barely make it in the Western Conference Finals. Obviously, a disappointing season would be 5th, 6th, 7th seed and facing one of the top teams in that first round, because a first-round knockout would certainly be a disappointment for a team that thinks they've gotten better.
Yeah, we were sitting here nodding our heads while you went on that spiel about the Clippers, and that's kind of, where we think about them as well. But, Eric, you gave us plenty of time. We'll have to get you back on when the regular season starts, and, maybe we'll ask some salary cap questions next time when we're not doing league previews.
Anytime. I'm happy to do it. Enjoy talking basketball.
We love you too, Eric.
Awesome,
Take care.
Eric. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Everybody, that was Eric Pincus from Hoopsworld.com. He is the salary guru out there. He's been trained by the best of them, and he's awesome stuff. He'll tweet you back if you have any questions. He's always willing to lend a hand and help.
Yep.
So we appreciate that.
And you can follow him, of course, at Eric Pincus. That's Pincus, if I'm not mistaken with my spelling.
And I think we're done with the Clippers.
Hey, Clippers! See you later. Now, did he or did he not just completely confirm what I said beforehand, that, sure, they got some guys out, they got some guys in, the guys that brought in were nice, they got some good pieces. Is that enough to advance? I don't know. It might just be a plateau situation there.
Yeah, they lost Swaggy P. They lost Mo Williams. They let my boy Ryan Gomes go. And, they lost, they traded Reggie Evans. Reggie Evans. And, Randy Foy's gone. And then they added that with some veterans and, a high-profile guy in Jamal Crawford who can score bunches. We've got a guy with the heart problem, Ronnie Turioff, great bench player, waves a towel of the best of them. But did they really get better? And I think for the Clippers to get better, it's going to depend on who they already had, and that's Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, and I don't think Chris Paul can get any better, really.
Yeah, he's just fantastic, and everybody
kind of
knows
is what
that.
he is. But
yeah, we don't really need to mention Chris Paul. He's sort of like a very given, great player. He's been, at times number 1 overall in fantasy, so we know how great he is. And speaking of greatness, time to talk about the Sacramento Kings.
So, like I said, we have a little leeway until we start talking about the Lakers, and I like to do.
Yeah, what time do we have? We have Rey Rey joining
Rey's coming on around 7:00, so we got about 25 minutes to break down the Kings and the Kings and Warriors.
That's more than we'll need.
That's plenty of time. So we're gonna run through this, and I will start off with one comment about the Sacramento Kings. And if you're a Kings fan, please tweet, call us. We'd love to talk to you.
Yeah, please tweet me at James_Bucklin. I love the Kings.
And I'm not going to tell you how to say my Twitter handle because it's too hard to understand. But you can tweet my personal one. It's Jacob N. Noble.
Well,
That's
his is pro basketball talk, but in the word basketball, you got to nix out those vowels.
Nix them. So, speaking of nixing things, we're going to nix the Kings for making the playoffs. That's number 1. Number 2, when John Salmons and mashed potatoes is your highest paid player, things aren't looking too good.
Well, and it's not just that. Sure, he's the highest paid player, but it's only $8 million. So these guys, they're not breaking the bank on any of these players. They're not really saddled to anyone for long-term contracts besides, Jason Thompson, and you've always got my boy DeMarcus Boogie Cousins, who they'll have for a few years, hopefully for them, because he's a steal with what they're paying him right now.
So he's in his rookie contract, and
right.
He's a fantastic, prospect. I have high hopes for the Boogie Cousins. I hope he gets a coach he likes. I hope he gets a coach he can play for. That seems to be the issue with him. People say he's uncoachable, but I see a lot of traits in him that we see in Rajon Rondo. He's not complaining that he's not having the best seat on the plane. He's not complaining about the food in the locker room. He's complaining about ways to win the game of basketball. And if it's a healthy argument, I believe, when you have players who want to win. The same thing what Kobe people used to say about Kobe in his early days, and they weren't winning, and he thought he knew what was best to win. And you can't knock a guy like that, but there's also got to be a sense of maturity that he's got to be able to take some criticism, and I don't know if Boogie has been able to do that.
Yeah, and with the name Boogie, obviously you can link the word fun into that, and he sort of likes to have fun. That's the type of guy he is. That's the reason that I am a fan of him in the first place. You look over this team, there's a lot of guys, and this is probably why they won't be very successful. A lot of guys, they're a fun team. You got Aaron Brooks, who's coming over from China. He can score in droves. You've got, obviously, Jimmer Fredette, who apparently finally got married and subsequently had some other things going on later that night that he may not have experienced before. So maybe he'll be a little looser this year. Mr. Jimmer, you got the Chuck Wagon. This is a fun team here at the Kings.
It is a fun team, and this is what I'm going to get into, because they got a guy like Thomas Robinson, a rookie, and a lot of people are very high on him.
He's a very, very talented kid.
He's a very talented kid. He's a 4-year player from Kansas, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
he's a good prospect to have, and you know if you have him at the 4, Boogie at the 5, you got a good veteran in Chuck Hayes, you know the Chuck Wagon. We love him. He'll at 6'6" center. You can't find anybody shorter than him at a better center position than him. And then they also got other guys like Charles Outlaw. You know as you mentioned, they got Jason Thompson. They got a lot of length on this team, a lot of upside and length. You know they got a lot of prospects, but they lack that star, and everyone thought that Tyreek was going to be that star, and he jumped out the gun, and I think he's one of those players. He is what he is. What he got his first year is going to be the same statistics we're going to see carried over year after year.
Well, I would say maybe possibly lower than his first year. He was very, very good his rookie season. I don't know if you remember. He averaged 23 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, something like that.
It was insane.
And the last person before him to have those type of numbers, 25-5, was LeBron James.
Yeah.
And the last rookie to do it before that was, a long time ago. So, I mean, Tyreek Evans showed his potential, but like you said, I think he's also reached his potential at the same time. He would have to improve his shot a lot, I think, to make it to the next level. But he's athletic as hell. He's got a tremendous size for his position, whether it be 1 or 2 guard. He's big. He's tall. He can sort of do everything on the defensive end. He'll get in the passing lanes. He's not a bad player. But is he that superstar? I don't think so. And you can say that about a lot of guys on the team. They've got a lot of talent. You're looking at Marcus Thornton. Terrific scorer.
Terrific scorer.
Is he that type of guy who can really lead your team to a playoff spot? I don't think so.
The thing about this team is they're going to have a hell of a lot of competition in camp. If you look if you look at this roster, who's his starting five?
Let's run it down here. You want to do the point guard position? You've got Aaron Brooks, who has had tremendous seasons at times. Tyreek Evans is in that mix. He can play the point. He probably won't on this team. You've got Jimmer Fredette, who obviously is not going to win that position, but another talent in there. And then take a look at Isaiah Thomas, who towards the end of the season last season was putting up some big numbers. That kid's got potential.
They have a lot of tweener guys. Tyreek is not a point guard. We just got to get that out there. He's not a distributor. He's a scorer. Mm-hmm. So I think with Aaron Brooks running the point and Tyreek at the 2, I think that's probably a safe bet to start the season. But
unfortunately for them, though, Aaron Brooks also has had more of a scoring career than a distributing career.
Exactly. And they have a lot of depth, and I think for them to get to where they need to be, first they got to figure out where they're going to be playing basketball in the future. Because obviously
that's
Maloofs,
one thing, yeah.
The Maloofs don't know what they're doing. Nobody knows what they're doing. They want the city to pay for everything. You got these 2 guys who own casinos for crying out loud. Yeah, just pay for a stadium and do the right thing as an ownership and help the city out. But that's a topic for another day. But going back to the people that actually matter on the team, which are the players.
Yep.
They got a lot of depth, and if the depth charts are going to be fun, they're going to be a fun team to play on NBA 2K. I'm going to have a ball playing with these guys. Yeah. But I think they need to make a move, because you could package some of these guys up and maybe get a disgruntled star. And I always throw this name out there because they're the one team that's cleaning house, and that's Josh Smith. Like a caliber of Josh. I'm not saying he's available now or tomorrow, but you can get an all-star caliber type player like a Josh Smith if you packaged up a couple of these players.
But it would have to be the right ones.
Absolutely.
Am I packaging up DeMarcus Cousins as part of that deal?
No, he's untouchable.
Absolutely not.
Untouchable.
Absolutely not. Am I doing with that Tyreek Evans? I would hope to maybe try to get straight up with that one. You would have to make the salaries work. But I'm not seeing Josh Smith as that much greater of a potential talent than Tyreek Evans.
No.
Maybe I make that deal because there's sort of a glut at the guard position anyway.
Yep.
It's an interesting thought. You would have to find a team who doesn't think that they're going to be a high-caliber team in their conference. You have to find someone that's willing to sell a star, and that's not easy to do.
Well, I mean, look at a guy like an Andrew Bogut. Like an Andrew Bogut monster-type trade. I think that is what the Kings need to look for, is need to make a few of those moves along the way, and it's also going to depend on what they got in Cousins and Thomas Robinson, because I think those 2 with Tyreek are the core that they kind of are viewing, and they need to determine which of those 3, all 3 do they keep? Do they keep 2 or 3, or do they realize that maybe none of those guys are what they're looking for? So that's what they're going to figure out over time in the next couple of years, is figure out what they have. Obviously, Jimmer Fredette didn't work out. He's garbage. He couldn't guard Ocean. He's just terrible. His shooting's not really that great anymore, and he's a waste of pick in my opinion. But they got some veterans in there who can show them how to act. You got Travis Outlaw and Chuck Hayes in there that have the veteran presence. John Salmons and mashed potatoes can be a veteran presence, and it's really going to come down to who they want to keep and who they want to move.
Yeah, Thomas Robinson I think is going to be interesting. If he doesn't work out, great. They have a backup plan in Jason Thompson. But if you want to talk about people who you potentially could package in a deal, I think you look at Thompson. He's, when given the playing time, put up
good contract,
terrific numbers.
And good contract.
He is a good contract, definitely. This is about $5-6 million per year. That's not bad at all for the potential that he has. Like I said, when he gets minutes, he produces.
Yep.
Teams are going to be looking for something like that. This team certainly has the pieces to make a deal. Can they do it, though, especially with, like you said, the uncertainty behind that franchise?
Yeah, I mean, who's going to want to...
You're certainly not going to find someone who's itching to go to Sacramento. Maybe you can, in a trade, acquire someone who you want, but you're not going to get it through free agency, I don't think.
No, I agree with you. So the Kings are going to just have to play it out, see who they have, and they got to worry more so not what's not on their team and worry about what's on their team. They got to do a good job of scouting and figuring out what they have, where they can go, and it's really going to be on the coaching staff to be able to develop these players.
Jacob, talking about the Kings, it depresses me a little.
It depresses you?
Yeah. And the reason is because when I was younger, I was a massive, massive Sacramento Kings fan, and I'll tell you why. I did love C. Webb, and you're absolutely correct in that. You've known me for a long time. You know that. Chris Webb was one of my all-time favorite players. I love those teams with Vlade, standing at the top of the key, interior passing with him and C. Webb. It was terrific. Jason Williams.
They got robbed in 2002.
Yeah, Tim Donaghy was reffing one of those very important games for the record, but that's, neither here nor there. We'll let the courts and the judges decide what's going on there. That page to start. Anyway, besides the point. I love those teams. I love the Kings. I even love this roster. The problem with me is they're going to move this team, and it depresses the hell out of me because they had such a great fan base there at Arco Arena. It was one of the most consistent attendance arenas that we've ever, and not only consistent attendance-wise, but loud-wise. One of the best places to ever see a game played. The place was rocking. It was amazing. If Sacramento doesn't have a basketball team, that's going to depress the hell out of me. And I think it would even affect me worse than what happened with Seattle. I think I'd be more upset about Sacramento losing a team.
Yeah, it's tough. They've gone from the days of Mike Bibby to the days of not having a team. I don't know how they wake up, and you know what? We're depressing them even more, reminding them of the good old days. So right. I think we should call this one a thumbs up.
Call it a day for the Kings? Okay.
So we know where the Kings sit. Enjoy your season, Kings fans. Hope for improvement. Hopefully Boogie does some fun stuff.
Jimmer.
And Jimmer. I can't stand Jimmer.
He got it in there.
He did get it in there. He did get married.
Yeah.
Oh, he's allowed to now. That's all.
Right, yeah.
Mormons.
You got it now? You following me now?
I was a little behind on the Mormon
joke. There was a tweet by Boogie Cousins right after he got married. He's like, my boy Jimmer's getting it tonight. We won't get into that, though. This is not the Bozos of basketball. This is NBA Unplugged here.
This is.
I think I forgot for a second.
Yeah, you do 2 shows back-to-back that you forget which character you're in.
Tough.
Let's move over to San Francisco or Oakland, wherever their stadium is over there, where the Golden State Warriors play. And I'll talk about another great arena. And speaking of, I was reading in the book that I'm going to mention one more time. I think everybody should read it, The Art of a Beautiful Game.
Are you getting paid by this Chris Ballard guy? Is this what's going on here?
I might be.
You can tell me about this. I'd like a cut if I'm going to be talking about it. No, I'm
not getting paid, but it's a fantastic book. But anyways, to talk about dunking, and not Tim Dunking, The Art of Dunking. And we all remember that dunk of Baron Davis over Andre Kirilenko.
There's a picture in here I saw when I was looking through while you were blabbing on about it. Or whatever.
Too bad they can't see the picture on the show. Oh, maybe we'll just tweet this picture.
Tweet that picture.
We have technology.
That to you.
We have technology.
I think I just lost your page. I'm pretty sure I just
Whatever.
dropped.
I'll just reread the whole book again.
Yeah,
Whatever.
I dropped your bookmark out of there.
Yeah, it's fine. I think I finished The Art of Dunking, and I was going to something else.
I'll put it in there somewhere.
He'll put it in there somewhere, the same way Jimmer's doing.
Oh!
All right, so let's talk about this Warriors team, because they're very interesting to me. Now, I don't think they'll make the playoffs.
I'm interested.
They could make the playoffs, but I don't think they're going to. But I like their front court. I really do. I think if Bo gets healthy, David Lee, can go back to the David Lee of old. They got a backup in Carl Landry, who I'm very fond of. They're a deep team.
Don't forget about Adrian if he can stay healthy, which never happens.
Never happens. But they got a lot of salary tied up into this roster, at least for this year and into next year. They got a lot of qualifying and team options and player options going into next year, so a lot of moving parts next year. But for this year, they got $70 million into a payroll for a lot of players who are respectable. And, we got Bogut, Lee, Richard Jefferson, say what you want about him, Adrian Beedridge, Jared Jack, Carl Landry, Brandon Rush, Harrison Barnes, who everyone's very interested to see how he is. He probably would have been a number 1 pick if he came out the year before.
Yeah.
Went back to school, dropped down in the draft. He's probably got a chip on his shoulder, or at least I hope for the Warriors' sake he does.
Yeah.
But this is an interesting team.
Right. And Harrison Barnes will probably be big for them. Doesn't have to be big for them this season. One name you didn't mention here, Darrell Wright. He's no longer on this team. He was a big part of what they did in the past couple of years, but they are absolutely infatuated in love with Klay Thompson. You hear them talk about Klay Thompson like he's the next coming of Jordan. It's really that bad when you read a lot of Warriors stuff like I do. You hear Mark Jackson talk about this kid. And sure, he's put up some big games. He's had some 30-point games on the Golden State Warriors, in which games sort of go up and down the court, and you'll see a lot of big numbers getting put up, especially from guys like him and David Lee towards the end of the year last year. For me, I think that's very important to see where they go with that small forward position, and it's very important to have health at the point guard position with Stephen Curry. I think that is absolutely the most important thing on the Golden State Warriors team, because they're pretty deep at every other position. At the point guard, it's Stephen and it's everybody else. Jarrett Jack, he's solid, but you really got to have you want to have someone electric running the point on a team that's supposed to score a lot of points like them. Will they commit to defense like they're supposed to do for the past 5 seasons? I don't know. That remains to be seen to me as well.
Yeah, you pointed it out perfectly there. They're weak at the point guard and shooting guard. Their bigs, they got a plethora of bigs. So, they're going to be looking for teams who are shopping for bigs. And I think they're going to move Adrian Beedrins. They kind of know who he is. He's got 2 years left on his deal, including this year. That can cut some cap, and they could probably get something back for him.
Somebody probably wants that contract.
Yeah, I mean, $9 million isn't bad for a center.
And it's coming off the books. At the end of 2003, 2014?
Yeah, so he's there for this year and next year. And, they're looking at Bogut and Lee as their future. They got RJ for the same amount of deal, a couple years, and that move baffled me. I don't know why they did that either, but... Yeah,
that didn't make any... Well, they probably just didn't want, Sometimes you bring in a guy just because he's not the other guy.
Yeah, exactly. And then we also got to talk about they lost Nate Robinson. I mean...
Oh, no!
Sarcasm. But the Warriors, it's going to be interesting to see what style of play they do, and I hope Harrison Barnes gets to get a lot of playing time. They might push him at the 2, to give him some time out there and to go with a bigger lineup. They're a big team because you got to think Klay Thompson's going to be playing at 3. If he's the next coming of God, he's going to be playing starting minutes. He's going to be starting at the 2 or the 3 for them, and you got to think Harrison Barnes will be at the other side. And is Richard Jefferson going to be okay with on the bench, or are they going to start him because he's a veteran and he makes a lot of money? You got a lot of egos to deal with.
Yeah.
You got a lot of egos to deal with.
If I had to predict the starting lineup right now, when healthy, which is a huge question for them, obviously, because let's look down the list of the health issues that we have. Bogut, injury prone. Lee, sometimes injury prone. Andres Beedrins, very injury prone. Stephen Curry, injury prone. Health is going to be huge for them. But if I had to predict a starting lineup, I'd probably say Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, Richard Jefferson, David Lee, Andrew Bogut for now. But, like you said, a lot of young talent on that bench. Harrison Barnes, that kid Draymond Green that apparently can just put up triple-doubles in NCAA games, which is very interesting. So
he's one of those guys, Draymond Green is, that doesn't wow you athletically. And, people, it's kind of like, and I hate going to this reference because it's hard to reference sport, but like in the NFL, a guy wows him in the combine, didn't do anything all college year, and they think he's going to be great. But basketball to me is an instinctive sport. Some guys just have it. You can't explain why they have it. And, people will pass on guys because they don't fit the bill athletically. They don't wow you on the stat sheet.
How does Paul Pierce go down to the 10th pick in the NBA draft?
Yeah, and Rafe LaFrentz goes over him. I mean, some guys play the game of basketball and they understand it. Like a guy like Jared Dudley wouldn't wow you athletically, but he understands the game very well. He's had a great career at
and can help
BC.
Your team.
Draymond Green had a great 4 years at Michigan State, and I believe they made the tournament every year and gone far into the tournament every year with him. The guy's a player, and he understands the game of basketball. There's certain things you can't teach in basketball, and that is, basketball IQ. You can't go take a course in college and basketball 101. Let me learn about basketball and what to do in situational play. And there's just things on the court where you have to have the instinct to do it.
I think of players like Paul Pierce. I think of players like Steven Jackson, guys who do not really have baffling athletic talents, guys who sort of move along slowly on the court, as it seems, but for some reason, there's no one blocking their shot. For some reason, they get to the basket. For some reason, they get open looks. How they do it, it's all mental, And sometimes it's changing speeds. Sometimes it's beating your opponent in a plethora of different ways. Draymond Green sounds like a guy who's probably going to fit that mold. He probably won't be on the level of the players that I just mentioned, but, that remains to be seen. We've seen crazier things before in the NBA.
Well, the league's going smaller. Draymond Green's probably, 6'7", 6'8" at best, maybe 240. I don't have the numbers in front of me.
Built pretty well, yeah.
He's a big, solid guy, and he plays the 4. He can't play the 3. He's not quick enough, but he's going to play the power forward position, and he might even get thrown in the center. Hey, if Chuck Hayes can play center, why can't Draymond Green play center here and there? But the league is going smaller. There aren't many 7-foot centers that are truly dominating, and the thing about playing down low in the paint, it's not necessarily being tall and jumping higher. It's about positioning and moving your player and moving your opponent and getting to the ball quicker. And it's more of a lateral game opposed to a vertical game when it gets down low. So I think Draymond's going to have a good career in the NBA. He's going to be a role player, and I don't think he's going to make an all-star, but he's going to be a guy who can help out. And I think they got a steal for him.
Okay, Warriors, Golden State. We're looking at him here. We talk about ceilings with a lot of our guests.
We didn't talk about ceiling on the Kings.
We didn't do Rockets.
We did do Rockets. We don't need to do that. We're fine with them. Their ceiling is missing the playoffs. Their low is missing the playoffs.
Right. Golden State, I don't know. I might be able to make a Brian Geltzeller-esque playoff prediction here for the Golden State Warriors.
You kidding me?
If they stay healthy, and it's tough to do this because the West is pretty deep. There's a lot of good teams out there. I don't know. There's a lot of talent on this team. I think their ceiling is probably a 7 or an 8 seed. Chances are they probably won't make the playoffs, but if they stay healthy, and again, that's a big but, probably the size of Eddie Curry's, I could see them making the playoffs.
You know what? This team right now reminds me of the Houston Rockets the past 2-3 years, where they were on the fringe. They're going to be in a playoff bubble. There's going to be those 3 to 4 teams fighting for the 7, 8 seed. You're going to have 2 teams miss it. In the last couple of years, it's been the Rockets missing it. I see the Golden State Warriors being that team.
Yeah.
With
Carl Landry.
With Carl Landry, he brings it. But they have talent. They need Stephen Curry to step up his game, to have a full healthy season, stay injury free, and we say that about everybody mostly. But if he stays healthy, if he can distribute the ball well, and they can work an inside-outside game, which I think they can with their roster. They might need a couple other shooters, but Brandon Rush can light it up. If he gets hot. They got to work the inside-out game. Get Bogut and Lee working down low. Bogut's a fantastic interior scorer.
Oh, yeah.
And
not a bad defender either.
No, he's not bad. He can block a lot of shots. He's a big body, heavy, and going again.
Can't say the same about David Lee, but...
No, you can't say. But David Lee's going to, do the dirty work. He's going to be their Luis Scola for doing more Rockets analogies.
Yeah, for comparing this to the former Rocket squads.
But to me, going to Andrew Bogut real quick before we hop over to Lakers with Rey Rey here, Bogut's injuries have been interesting because... he was tweeting about this, I want to say, during the summer, because people always say you're injury prone, blah, blah, and he brought up a great point. He goes, my injuries are sort of freak. When he fell off the rim and landed on his arm, it's not like he was just walking and fell and died. No, he landed on his arm awkwardly after dunking.
Yeah,
it was a freak incident. That's rarely happened.
Which was talked about last night on the Bozos of Basketball. Go on.
Oh, ooh.
But shameless plugs all over the place, folks.
No, there's no such thing as shameless unless it's on Showtime.
Hey!
More plugs. So, Bogut's injuries aren't like, he pulls his Achilles every year, or, he has knee cartilage issues, or weak ankle,
right,
Stephen Curry.
He may go on the unlucky tag rather than the injury-prone tag.
Exactly. So,
I'll give you that.
So, he's never had a serious injury where it's come to, knee or ankle or whatever it may be. So, I think Bogut can be all right, and he's excited to be out there, and, gets out of Milwaukee for crying out loud.
Yeah, I think Bogut is big here for their ceiling, and I think we've mentioned him a million times already, I know, but Stephen Curry is absolutely huge. The conversation about Stephen Curry is no longer can he coexist with Monte Ellis. Monte Ellis is gone. He's in Milwaukee. The question now is, how far can Stephen Curry take this team at the point guard position? Can he stay healthy? Can he run the team and score for himself at the same time and lead them to where they need to be, which is, at this point, I'd say a ceiling of the 7th or the 8th playoff spot. Are we ready for Lakers?
One last comment. I think the Golden State Warriors need to move Adrian Beedron. Trade him, and I think a good trade scenario would be trade him and Jarrett Jack to the Raptors for Jose Calderon and Ed Davis. But that's that. We're going to hop on with our main man, our brother from another mother. He's out west. He handles the no-look pass. He runs that whole organization, basically, and none other than Rey Rey from the no-look pass. How are we doing today, Rey Rey?
It is hot here in the West Coast, guys.
Yeah, it's hot in this office because they turned my AC off. What's up with that?
And also because we're sitting about 2 inches away from each other, staring into each other's eyes. That's a hot situation.
Yeah, we only have one headphone set right now, so we got to make do with what we got. So, but we got a nice mic.
That's really romantic, guys. I'm jealous.
Hey, if you come to the East Coast, or if we get this show on the road, we can make this as intimate as possible.
Yeah, as intimate as you want to get, sir.
All right.
So, you're sitting pretty as a Laker writer over there, and, you didn't win the title last year, but it feels like you won the title. I mean, I haven't heard the Miami Heat mentioned all summer, and, maybe the Heat like it that way, but everything's been talking about L.A. And before we get into the big names, let's talk about the biggest acquisition here first, and that's going to be Antoine Jamison. Talk to us a little bit about what your expectations are this upcoming season for Antoine Jamison, who, in my opinion, is kind of like a poor man's Lamar Odom, or maybe he's a rich man's Lamar Odom these days.
I'm not too thrilled with the Antoine Jameson acquisition because, he can't even guard his own wallet probably. The guy doesn't really play defense. We all know that. And the funny thing is that in 2010, he was supposed to be the key to the Cleveland Cavaliers championship, right? You guys remember that, right?
He was the superstar they were going to put next to LeBron that he needed.
You mean Mo Williams and Jamison and LeBron, the big three?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But, as long as he scores more than whoever he's guarding, and that's cool with me. And, since there's that big guy in the middle, I think they'll be okay.
Great. Now, since we've spoken about Antoine Jamison and we led off with him for some reason, I'm not sure why. Let's go on. Let's move on to Dwight Howard here and bringing that cat into the mix. What I wrote in my notes here was generic Dwight Howard questions, so let's see what I can get for you. How does Dwight Howard fit on this team? How does Steve Nash get in the ball? And how do him and Pau Gasol share touches?
Yeah, this is tough. There's only one basketball, guys, and there's, 4 if you count Ron, Meta, what do you want to call him. Those are 5 guys that need the ball, basically. But if I were the Lakers, I just had Dwight Howard as basically like their, he's there for defense. He is a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. He'll cover basically every Laker defensive laps out there, and whatever the scraps that they give him, because Kobe's gonna shoot 20 times again. We all know that. He eats first, and there's still Steve Nash, still Pau Gasol, so I think he just gets the leftovers basically, and that's good enough for the Lakers, I believe.
I don't want to ask this question because I think it's a stupid question, but everyone's asking it. They're always stupid people, I know. Well, I don't see this being an issue, but everyone's asking it, and I'll kind of tell my opinion after you tell yours is, everyone says, how's Kobe going to adjust to watching a pick and roll with Nash and Dwight? Is he going to be comfortable sitting on the perimeter watching them, and is Kobe going to get enough shots? Is Kobe going to be happy? To me, Kobe's going to be happy when he's winning.
Yeah, I believe so, but you know how Kobe is. He wants to, he has these goals. He has his own individual goals. He wants to be the best of all time and all that stuff. So I think they'll come to some kind of compromise where maybe he'll only shoot 18 times basically, but in the end, it's all about winning. He wants to get 6, 7, 8 championship rings just to be ahead of Jordan. I think they'll be fine.
And with Nash being added to the team, if we want to talk about touches, who do you think has the ball in their hands more often when both of them are on the court, Nash or Kobe?
This is tough, really.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I don't think they know the answer to this stuff yet.
Yeah, probably not.
Well, I still think Kobe's going to get a lot of touches in the post, but what most people don't know is that Kobe is really good off the ball. He's a really good cutter, and Steve Nash is one of the best passers in the league. So if they come to that compromise where Kobe cuts and they let Steve Nash handle the ball, they'll be fine. And we know that Kobe handled the ball way too much last year, and that was to their detriment. So I think again they'll come to some kind of compromise. As long as they're winning, they'll be okay.
Yeah, and Zach Lowe wrote a great piece about that. About Kobe's ability to cut, and I think he's actually going to make the game a little easier for Kobe. He's going to get a lot of easier touches inside the paint, and I think it's always going to work. But my question is, who's going to be the first backup off the bench for Steve Nash? Because they're going to limit his minutes. I mean, he's almost 40 years old. he's not
Canadian.
He's Canadian. He's not the best defender. I hope Mike Brown manages the minutes well. Who do you see being the premier backup between Chris Duhon and Steve Blake this upcoming season?
Did you see Chris Duhon play last year?
Yeah, he was great. I mean, I bought his jersey, I got his shoes, and I want to be like Chris Duhon.
No, but seriously though, Steve Blake's the default backup. I mean, here's the thing.
Because he's white?
Fans were so... I love his wife, by the way. We talk a lot, but Steve, yeah, we do actually. But Steve Blake was unfairly railed by a lot of Laker fans because they don't see gaudy stats off of him. But he played a really good floor game last year. They didn't notice that because he was not converting shots that he normally made when he was at Portland and Denver. So, but Darius Morris didn't really have a fantastic summer league other than that one game where he made all his shots, 9 for 9 or something like that in Vegas. And, Chris Duhon, I mean, again, he was pretty bad last year. If we get the New York version of Chris Duhon, which is pretty unlikely, then we may have a case here. But until then, it's Steve Blake's job to lose.
Speaking of Steve Blake, believe it or not, I do have a second Steve Blake question.
Wow.
Recently, ESPN came out with their top 500 players, and Steve Blake ranked over Nate Robinson. Nate Robinson took quite an offense to that on Twitter. Where do you stand in the battle between rankings of Steve Blake and Nate Robinson?
I mean, of course, you put him one-on-one, Nate Robinson's going to win. We all know that.
Right.
But
I think Steve would disagree.
Yeah. But, I mean, Steve Blake plays within the team concept, and I really haven't seen Nate Robinson do that. Except for that 1 year in the Celtics, I guess. He was pretty good in the finals. We saw that.
Oh, yeah.
But,
yeah, it is a tough comparison.
Yeah. But
I mean, Steve Blake's got fire. I mean, we saw the fight in Maryland he had with his teammate. That was televised. That was good stuff.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's able to still play in the NBA without Juan Dixon on his team. They were binkies for quite some time.
Yeah, I hear he takes MMA. His wife told me. So.
Oh.
Yeah. So he's pretty fiery out there.
Now, I would be pretty upset if I was Paul Gasol listening to this podcast because we've already asked about 3 or 4 Steve Blake questions, and Paul Gasol wants a little attention. So talk to us about how do you see Paul's role changing, if at all, with the new acquisition of Dwight Howard?
I don't think it changes much at all. I just think that they need to use him more often because he's so damn good at the post.
Yeah.
I think the problem last year was that they were trying to integrate Andrew Bynum more, which was fine because he needed his touches too. But they made Pau Gasol into a stretch 4 last year basically, and if you're gonna have Pau Gasol shoot 3-pointers, then you don't know what you're doing out there.
Well, Chris Bosh learned a 3-point shot real quickly. Maybe Pau can do it.
Yeah, but Pau's a post player. We all know that.
Yeah, we know.
He does have a hell of an elbow jumper, though, and I'm assuming he'll get a lot of open ones when you got Nash, Kobe penetrating the paint, and you have Dwight Howard posting up down there.
Yeah, definitely, and his mid-range is money. But anything farther than that, I would rather not have him do.
Sure.
Now, this is interesting to me because I'm a huge fan of the triangle offense. James and I used to coach youth basketball. We installed it a few years ago, and we loved it. It works great. Now,
besides those kids being dumb and not understanding it.
Yeah, little kids, what can you do? But there's all this talk about the Princeton offense, and I want to take your opinion on which offense do you think would have been better with this group of personnel as it stands today, and why? Either the Princeton offense or the triangle offense.
Oh God. That's really tough. Again, with the Princeton offense, they really rely on the back cuts basically, and I only really see like Kobe. Do you see Dwight Howard doing that? Do you see Dwight Howard do back cuts? Can you picture that?
Well,
on a trampoline.
Yeah. I mean, with the amount of attention Dwight gets, if he had his back to the basket and you dump the ball into him and Kobe cuts. Your defender has to chase Kobe, and then that would leave Nash at the 3-point line, and Kobe was going to cut in and come back out. And, it depends on how the defense reacts. But going back to what you just said, it's not Dwight's cutting that worries me. It would be Dwight's decision-making in the triangle offense. Would he make the right decision on those plays? Because he's not an offensive player. He never and I'm going to keep saying it, he never has been. He probably never will be. He kind of just does it at a sheer, size and ability, but he's not really a skilled offensive player to, really hone that side of the game.
Yeah, but at least with Dwight Howard's acquisition, it works better because if you have Andrew Bynum on either the Princeton or the triangle, oh my God, you've seen Bynum in double teams.
Yeah.
He's terrible.
Well, Bynum thinks he can take the world on, so he takes on those double teams instead of looking around and saying, oh, crap, I got Kobe Bryant and Pau Gasol next to me. Let me give them the ball. He doesn't think like that. He's too busy zenning it,
Yeah. I'm going to miss him, though, because he's such a character. I love him.
We've mentioned Zen and we've mentioned the triangle offense within the past 5 minutes. Do you think Phil Jackson's upset that he's not coaching this team, and how long does it take before he finds a way to replace Mike Brown and get his 11th?
Oh, God, his 12th, you mean, right?
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, but I don't really see Phil coaching. I don't see Phil coaching anymore. What's that going on in the background?
Oh, that was just Jacob. He was calling his friend.
Yeah, but I don't see Phil coming back.
I mean, I hope he comes back for the sheer lack of entertainment on Mike Brown's part. I mean, everyone gives Mike Brown a hard time. Now, I'm going to stick with one more question. If Mike Brown does not win the title this year with the Lakers, do you see him coming back for next year?
Yeah, for now, yeah. I think he gets 2 years.
You don't seem excited about it.
Well, to me,
I mean, you've seen Mike Brown coach offense, if that was he was trying to do out there. I don't know. He's a fantastic defensive coach, so I'll give him that. But yeah, I think he gets 2 years.
He might be the opposite of Phil Jackson.
Yeah, really.
And the reason I say that because Phil wins with everybody, and Mike Brown loses with all these great teams.
Hi, Cleveland. How's it going?
Yeah. Oh, they're still around? Oh, we didn't get to that division yet. We don't know about them yet. We know nothing about Cleveland. Maybe next week we'll do that division. But let's go to another guy who I think is very interested on this team. That's Jordan Hill. What kind of role do you see Jordan Hill playing this year?
At least Jordan Hill hustles, which I could say more than Andrew Bynum did in all the minutes he played last year. At least he resurrected his career. He has a good nose for the ball. He's got a decent jumper, so I mean he's a good backup center. Unfortunately, he's not going to live up to being a top 10 lottery pick, but in the Lakers, whatever his role is there as a backup center, it's good enough. So I like the pickup.
Do you think Meta World Peace goes the Chad Johnson route and changes his name back to Run Our Test?
I think he said once that he regretted it.
Really?
I think I read that in the LA Times. I think he says, I don't know what I was thinking, changing my name. Maybe he will, maybe he won't, but you never know with Ron. I still call him Ron.
Yeah, I mean, we still call him Ron from time to time, but, I mean, I think he could probably use that quotation you just had on a lot of his decisions.
True warrior. And
now, over, under, on the amount of different hairstyles Ron Artest will showcase this year. 4.
Oh.
He didn't even change his hair last year, though.
Well, he needs to change something up.
I wish he would change his number to like something weird again, like 78 or something like that. I wish he would do that because I'm a fan of like unusual jersey numbers. It's kind of weird, but no, he's only going to go with one hairstyle.
That'd be cool if he had a different number every game somehow.
Is that legal? Can you do that?
I don't know.
I think the amount of time it takes to
probably have to
do the paperwork. No, there's no fine. I just think it's the time it takes to do the paperwork to keep changing, and they might only let you do it per season. I don't know. That's a good question. We're going to research that and get back to you.
Yeah, imagine if LeBron James and Kobe Bryant did that every game. It's like they'd make a lot of money off that.
Well, I mean, if I was Wilt and I scored my 100 points, I would have changed my jersey, and everyone would have bought that 100-point jersey. Like, if you somehow get the jersey number 99, and there'd be some bulk to the 100 points.
Or 00, and then just put a sticker next to it that was in the shape of a 1.
I wish you could have triple digits as your jersey number. That'd be cool, I think.
Yeah, we only have 2 hands though as officials, so we can't. It'd be hard scorecarring it at home.
Eventually, though, let's say we're still playing basketball in the year 4000. There will be enough retired numbers that they'd have to start doing
the Celtics are the one team that comes to mind because there's
so many. Boston, yeah, I mean they have so many retired numbers out there.
They retired numbers for owners who never wore numbers, and it's not even fair. Like, Tracy McGrady can never come to the Celtics because he can never wear number 1.
And they also have letters up there in lieu of numbers for Jim Loskatoff. They just have Losky written up there.
Yeah, I mean, you got to do what you got to do when you retire everybody every single year.
Yeah.
I mean, now let's get into some serious questions here. Talk to me about what your expectations are for a ceiling for the Lakers this upcoming season, and what do you consider being, obviously missing the playoffs would be the lowest.
A failure.
But like, a failure to them. Like, what's a respectable failure for them?
A failure for them?
Yes.
Is that what you said?
Is anything besides the NBA championship, worth their while?
Yeah, it's title or bust for the Lakers. They're going for it, man. It's like I think they're near $100 million on payroll.
They are.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. That's and they say Jim Buss is cutting payroll.
And Kobe 28% of that.
Oh, Jesus. I want to borrow at least $5 from Kobe. Yeah, it's title or bust. If they don't win the finals, it's a failure. That's basically it. That said, I'm not even sure if they're still they're a guaranteed number 1 seed because we just can't ignore Oklahoma City. That's still an awesome team right there. Yeah. So I will say they win. They won't have Dwight Howard at the beginning of the season, I would think. I'll say they win 58 games this year, and I don't want to guarantee a title or anything like that. I really don't want to do that because I don't want to disrespect Oklahoma City or even the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat are the champions, and you can't.
Wait. You didn't get a tattoo on yourself yet with the title? It works for Jason Terry, so the Celtics are going to win it this year, so it doesn't matter.
Well, I will say this: the Celtics do look better, but that's Jason Terry, though. I talked to him in 2010 Summer League, and he was all like, "Oh, Miami better watch out. They better go through Texas if they want the title." Lo and behold, Dallas beat them for the title that year. So.
Yeah.
He knows what he's talking about.
Speaking of Miami, when you look at Los Angeles Lakers, having a pretty damn good chance of making it to the finals, we're pretty much expecting the Heat to be there. If those two teams do face off in the NBA Finals, who's the favorite there? I think that would be an amazing series. The only weakness I can see on the Heat's side of this is size. When you look at LA, you've got Dwight Howard and Pau Gasol. I think they would have a lot of trouble with that.
Yeah, it's basically like who's going to force their will upon each other because Miami wants to play fast. You don't know that, and the Lakers they want to slow it down with Dwight. They want to post up with Kobe and Powell, and it's going to be really tough. I can't really call that. Flip a coin.
Yeah, it's going to be whoever can impose their style on the other team. Now,
exactly.
My last question here for you, and I don't know if James has any more for you, but how comfortable are you with this Laker bench? Because to me, it's still kind of spotty here and there. I'm not too sold on it, and I still don't think they have a top 5 bench in the league. What is your take on the current Lakers bench?
I'm okay with it. Do you see last year's bench? That was atrocious.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least with Anton Jameson, though he can't defend, at least he'll put up 10, 12 points off the bench. And Jody Meeks, hopefully he can do better than that guy, what's his name, Jason Capono, who's out of the league right now.
Luke Walton.
Something like that. Luke Walton, yeah. The one I'm not too sold is the small forward spot. I like Devin Ebanks, but, he's still kind of shaky.
Yep.
Yeah. Other than that, I'm okay with it. I'm not going to say top 5. I'm not even going to say top 10, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I'm sure they're not done adding either. There's always veterans that will latch onto a team like this. It's possible someone we saw retire could come back.
Rasheed Wallace!
Yeah.
Yeah, what happened to the whole Rasheed Wallace thing? I thought, I remember, what's his name? I think Blakely.
A. Sherrod?
Blakely reported that last year, and where did that go?
Yeah, he showed up at Laker practices or something, and he showed up at Celtic practices, and he just shows up when he wants to, I guess.
Yeah, I think he just comes by to see his friends, and then it turns into news because everybody freaks about his appearance.
Yeah, I'd love to see Rasheed back, but I know.
Of course we would. We love that white spot.
Yeah.
Well, don't lie.
Ball doesn't lie. I got no more
Yeah.
for him. Do you have any more, James?
I think we're good with Mr. Rey Rey. Thank you very much for joining us and talking a little Lakers with us.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, one thing's for sure, he's got an easy job this upcoming year. Lakers are great. They're
Yeah.
awesome. And
Let's talk about how good the Lakers are.
like, there's really no holes to talk about the Lakers. I mean, they
Besides
have
the bench, like you said.
Yeah, the bench is gonna scare me. Well, not scare me. It scares them a little bit. But you know, if they
They've
can
got minute eaters on that team.
Yeah.
Even though Nash can't really, but they're deep at point guard. You know, they've sort of covered their base a little bit. But like Ray Ray said, I agree with him. The weak position on that team is small forward, not only on the bench, but I think in the starting lineup as well. You don't know what you're going to get out of Meta World Peace.
Yeah.
I think Devin Ebanks is going to have probably a bigger role than he should on this team.
Bigger role than
Then he
they
would be-
want him to have.
Exactly. That was probably the better way to phrase what I was trying to say there.
But the thing to me about this Laker team, and we've seen it in the past, 2004 comes to mind, when, you know, they're just so stacked that
Oh, the Karl Malone, Gary Payton.
you looked at that team and said, how could they possibly ever lose a game?
Right.
And they did. And I think that's going to be the same situation. So I'm not big on the Lakers because...
Yeah, but we've also seen examples of how could they ever possibly, like last year with the Miami Heat, how could they lose? Well, they kind of didn't. And then we also saw it 2007, 2008 when Garnett and Paul Pierce and Ray Allen came together. How could that team ever lose? They still even have Rondo. They won 66 games in the championship. Sometimes these things come together and work as well.
Yeah, but, you know, we'll see how it goes. If one of those starters get in foul trouble and you got Gasol, who, you know, you probably want to keep around the 33 minutes. He's older. Nash, you want to keep in the 30, 33 minutes.
Yeah.
So
Kobe even. At
Kobe-
some point, you're going to have to cut the guy's minutes. He's been playing since he was 18 years old in the NBA.
Phil's been very good at that, and that's something I think Mike Brown needs to get better at, is managing the minutes. And Mike Brown didn't do a good job with LeBron. Granted, he had a young LeBron James, and it's something younger coaches need to learn. You got to give him
you
the
would
rest.
think, as a Popovich disciple, that he would
He'd
have
learn.
picked that up,
But you know, Doc's very good at it, Pop's very good at it, and Phil's very good at it. With Kobe, you got to sit him out, you know, at the 9-minute mark in the quarter. Give him those 3 minutes. You get the rest in between the quarter. You put him back out there, and you do that run. And then into the third, you kind of maybe rest him 3 minutes, and then 3 minutes into the fourth quarter, and then you play in the rest. So you know that's kind of what you're gonna have to do with this team. But who comes off the bench and makes you feel good?
Like I said, I'm not sure they're done yet. They're probably exhausting every resource they have right now to try to add something else, like a James Posey type or something like that, who can come in and defend and make a three. I'm sure there's guys out there who are ready to join a team, and they'll be looking up for that. I don't think this Lakers roster is done being built yet at all.
And then our third and final guess, if, like we said, if TSA works out and they want to get him through, will be Mike Schwartz to talk a little bit of the Suns. And the Suns did a lot of moves this offseason.
Yeah, are we going to start talking Suns now? Are we done with the Lakers?
We'll start talking some Suns. I mean, the Lakers are who they are. You know, the Bears are who we thought they were. Little Denny Green. We love using quotes from other sports. It's irrelevant, but it's great.
It's tough not to at times.
It is. But, you know, this team is very interesting in terms of, you look at this roster, and I want to know who hangs out with who. I mean, obviously Goran and Marcin Gortat are probably BFFs. I'm sure Luis Scola's
going to get in that mix.
They're in that mix. They're going out to dinner, and they're hanging out. But then you got guys like Michael Beasley.
I actually like Kendall Marshall to get added to that crowd. I think he'd fit in well with Goran, Marcin,
Do you think he's that kind of guy, or do you think he's going to lean towards the Michael Beasley, Jermaine O'Neal, we like the party crew?
No, I think Kendall Marshall's more of he's a smart kid, UNC.
You know who I think he'll follow? Channing Frye.
Channing Frye, Jared Dudley crowd?
That's the crowd he'll hang out with. I see Beasley and Jermaine O'Neal sitting at the end of the bench together, you know, planning the parties and inviting everybody else out. And
Sebastian Telfair will be very, very fond of that area.
Bassey, I mean, talk about a talent that never became. We could spend all day on the Sebastian Telfair story.
I could watch Through the Fire documentary 5 times over, which I have.
On a regular basis. And another interesting figure on this team is Wesley Johnson. I mean, he never turned out to be who he was supposed to be out in Minnesota, but maybe with the right coaching staff with Alvin Gentry and Phoenix, who might get it together. So
he's certainly talented. He kind of got lost in the shuffle, I think, in Minnesota.
He did.
There were a lot of guys like Michael Beasley who were playing a similar position to him and were hogging up all the touches. I think if he gets some open looks on this team, Goran Dragic is great at getting guys the ball when they're open. If he gets a lot of open looks, I think we'd be looking for a prime season from Wesley Johnson this year. He could battle Jared Dudley for a lot of those starting minutes, a lot of those starting shots.
Yeah, but going back to this team real quick, they kind of remind me of the Kings. A lot of talent, no
But
stars.
nobody,
Everyone's under...
Besides Gortat.
Besides Gortat. Everyone's under, like, okay contracts. They're not under great contracts. They're not under bad contracts. But they're under okay contracts.
Yeah, a lot of guys who would fit under the mid-level exception type. The guys you have over Gortat, Dragic, everyone's basically in the $7 to $5 million range, and it just kind of goes down.
I mean, I think the Luis Scola pickup was huge.
Yeah,
absolutely huge.
I'm surprised that the Rockets were willing to let him go.
Shocked me too, you know, because Scola is everything that Daryl Morey likes, and you know, maybe we can get him on this podcast someday and ask him what the hell he was thinking when he got rid of him. But I mean, Luis Scola does everything you want to do. He's a good locker room guy. He plays hard on both ends of the court. Now, you know, I think he's going to pick great with Goran Dragic, and I'd even throw Channing Frye in the 3. I'd get real wacky with this roster.
You
have nothing. I'm sorry. Marcin Gortat at the 5, Luis Scola, and then I would put Channing Frye at the 3, Goran at the 1, and I'd even throw Dudley at the 2. I'd get real big, just run big on people, because they're not an up and down team. I mean, they don't really have the
they got to do something,
guard.
right?
Yeah, they got to do something. Someone's gonna have to play positions. But they don't really have the wow shooting guard. Maybe they're going to throw Kendall Marshall out there.
Maybe Wesley Johnson becomes that guy.
He's kind of
don't forget Michael Beasley. He's a super scorer. He really is. And he's a little big himself. If you throw him at the 3, you've got a pretty big lineup.
So they got a lot of tweeners out here. A lot of... If you're playing fantasy, this team can play any position.
Just going to bring up fantasy. That this is not a team that's going to win a lot of games. They've got some guys who are going to put up some numbers. Scola, his numbers are going to be out of control, I think, this year. He's going to get a lot of minutes, and he's going to get a lot of touches because there's not much else as far as creating your own shot in this team. I think Goran can create 4 other players. I think Beasley can kind of do that himself. But especially in the post, Scola, I think, is going to put up Gortat-like numbers from last season.
Yeah, and I will say there's one item on this roster that makes me smile, and it's the fact that for once in his career, Jermaine O'Neal is not making the most amount of money on one team.
That's nice.
He is now making the least amount of money on this team. And the beautiful thing about Jermaine O'Neal, and we'll talk to Michael if he gets through TSA, and we'll get on governments another time, but we don't care about the TSA much on this podcast. But Jermaine O'Neal talked all summer about wanting to play for a title. I want to win a title. I want to do this.
Yeah,
so he signs with the Suns.
What are you doing with Phoenix if that's the case?
I think he's, looking for a retirement home. I guess a lot of people retire out in Phoenix and in Arizona. I mean, I don't know personally. I'm not looking to retire anytime soon, but I hear a lot of old people go out that way.
Yeah.
It's good for their skin.
Well, let's do this right now while we still have some time. We're seeing if Michael Schwartz is going to join us here tonight. Let's try to figure out what the starting lineup is on this team, because we kind of did that with the other teams here. Let's see what we've got here for the Phoenix Suns, because I think this could be a tough one. I think Goran's definitely your point guard. That's your starting point guard right there. He's the highest paid player on the team. You brought him in for a reason. He was Nash's heir apparent back in the day, and now he's back on the team and filling that role, I think.
Yep. Gortat's obviously the starting center. He had a great year last year.
Yes, he did.
The Polish Hammer came out and hammered everybody away, and he's one of the reasons that Orlando saw a huge drop-off in their performance defensively.
Right, and one less red Jordan tattoo on the calf.
One less.
One less for the Magic, anyway. The Phoenix Suns gained one when they picked up Marcin Gortat. I think the power forward position is pretty locked down by Luis Scola. This is a guy who's put up big numbers on teams before, and a winning player. He's a guy who's going to do the dirty work as well as get some sneaky baskets.
This is where it gets interesting, because I think we all agree that those 3 are starters.
Yes.
Most teams, they can go on and become a starter depending on what team they're at. But if you're a coach, do you go with Michael Beasley, who's a head case, who has had issues in the past? He's a fantastic talent. But then you got guys like Channing Frye who will do whatever he takes. He knows the system. You got guys like Josh Childress who know the system, who are good coachable guys.
Smart player, yeah.
So
and as well, Jared Dudley, very coachable, smart player.
So
he would probably be my choice for small forward, I think. He's been on the team for a while.
Yeah.
He can knock down the 3. He's a great defender, heady guy. Everyone he plays with likes playing with him.
Well, here's what I would get, because he can knock down the 3. I would move Dudley to the 2.
Interesting.
Because you got a logjam at 3. We just named 3 guys, not including Dudley, who can play the 3. With, Childress, Frye, and our main man, Michael Beasley.
I'm not sure I'm ready to say that Channing Frye can play the 3. Offensively, sure, because he's a great outside shooter.
Yep.
Defensively, I'm not sure. Like when we talked to Eric Pincus, he was talking about Lamar Odom. Can he guard Meta World Peace at the 3? Probably. Can he guard a Rudy Gay at the 3? Definitely not. I would see Channing Frye getting burnt by a guy like that.
So you want to slide Dudley into the 3?
I'm thinking Jared Dudley's our guy here.
Okay. So then Fry would be the backup center?
Backup power forward center, yeah. He's a big in that mix. Michael Beasley, I think, would be a good bench guy, come off, score some points.
6-man.
Yeah. The shooting guard position's a tough one. I think
Shannon
Wesley
Brown?
Johnson gets this, but I could also see Shannon Brown. Hey, he's been an underrated player for a long time.
Very
he can
athletic.
do a lot of things on the court. It's not just dunking with him like we see. He's a great defender. He can handle the ball. I wouldn't hate Shannon Brown as the starting shooting guard on this team. I think it'll be between him and Wesley Johnson.
We'll put Shannon and then put Wesley behind him.
Sure.
I'm trying to figure out this depth chart. I'm sure Alvin Gentry is going to want to see our notes when we're done here.
Yeah, he'll probably need some tips. Because
He's-
like you said, they're all getting paid about the same amount, and they're all kind of on the same talent level. It's tough to say what they're going to try to do.
It really depends on what kind of style you want to play. If you want to play an up-and-down type game, you're going to play with a little bit of a small lineup. Then maybe, you put Scola as the backup center and you throw Fry in at the 4.
Sure.
To run a little bit better. If you want to play bigger, maybe you throw in a Beasley at the 3 and Dudley at the 2. It's really going to depend on the style of play that Gentry wants to install this year. And they've had a huge roster shakeup. I mean, we can look at all the players lost and added, and it's massive. They've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 new players on this team. That's 8 new players on the roster. And then, and the people that they've lost, they let go a lot of talent. They let Aaron Brooks go, Grant Hill go, Akeem Warwick, Steve Nash, Robin Lopez, Josh Childress. Oh, he was amnestied. Crossed him off the list. Didn't even see that. We have black and white paper here. We don't have color. So Josh Childress is
Sorry
out
about
of
that, folks.
Yeah, we need to do our homework.
Not that we were really putting him in the equation anyway. He's not going to break the bank either way for the Phoenix Suns team.
He goes to the best decision in an afro and the worst decision of playing overseas.
But what does the image of the Suns become following Steve Nash? You mentioned them losing him.
Who's the guy they market?
I have no idea.
Jermaine O'Neal?
Nash was the Phoenix Suns.
He was.
For a long time.
He
Ever
moved
since coming back, he was drafted by them, played for Dallas those few years, came back to Phoenix and was the 2-time MVP, almost 3-time.
Yeah.
What happens now that he's not on the team anymore? Like you said, I don't know who they market. I don't know what kind of style they're going to try to play. It's really all up in the air with these Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, they don't really have a rookie prospect. I mean, Kendall Marshall's their guy, and most people aren't penciling him in to be an all-star or a perennial all-star. So going back to what we said with every team who's not in the mix, you got to get a star. So they got to package something here.
I don't know what there is to package, really.
I mean,
no one's going to give up a star for a package of really anything here. Michael Beasley, teams don't want him. Fantasy owners may want him if he gets minutes.
Well, I mean,
actual NBA basketball players, they don't want Michael Beasley.
People would want, people would want a Scola, they would want a Dudley, and they would take Marshall and some draft picks.
Right, but these are not guys. Well, maybe they could use a draft pick to do it. Maybe the strategy here is to try to lose a lot of games and get a high draft pick.
They did get some draft picks from the Lakers, a couple of second rounders. They're going to have some picks. They traded a lot of people away this year. Just Wesley Johnson. They traded for Wesley Johnson, but they got rid of Nash in a trade. They got rid of Robin Lopez in a trade. They got rid of Akeem Warwick in a trade. So they got some draft picks from people, and they got a lot of second rounders that they're just gonna have to build from the ground up. And
it's a bridge year.
Yeah, and going with the problem that a lot of teams have is how do you get people to come to you free agent wise? They got cap room. They're gonna have cap room over the next couple of years.
Luckily they're not too far from Las Vegas and they have good weather.
Yeah.
Well, maybe even too hot sometimes in Phoenix.
It's too hot.
Not that I've ever been.
A lot of cacti.
You ever been there to Nevada?
The most west I've been was Colorado.
Really?
Where the sun shines 300 days a year.
You might even have me beat. What's the most west I've been? That's irrelevant.
We're talking about where we've gone. Let's talk about where the Suns are going to be going.
Nowhere.
I mean, who has room to improve? I think Beasley has room to improve maturity-wise, but we've seen what he can do on a court. It's just not consistent. He'll have those nights where he'll put up 25 points and 8 rebounds and, get a block, a steal.
Yeah.
But he is what he is on the court-wise, I think. Mature-wise, he can learn the game a little better. He can get his teammates involved a little better. Scola's on the downside of his career.
Right. Or Todd, I don't know how much more you can ask for him than what he gave you last season.
Yeah, he is what he is.
I really don't think you can ask for much more out of him.
I think Dudley is a career role player.
Yep.
I think Wesley Johnson probably is one of the few, same with Goran and Dragic, that have the opportunity to become something. But, Goran's been in the league, 6 years now? He's been
right.
there for a while.
I don't see him getting higher than he is right now either. I think his ceiling has pretty much been met.
No, he had a great year last year.
The big difference here with him is minutes, I think. When he's given a large amount of minutes like he's going to be this year, we talk about fantasy, I think he'll probably put up huge numbers.
Yeah, and just so you guys want to know my fantasy tip, grab decent or good players on bad teams. That's the way to go. You know, you don't want to draft anybody on the Lakers. I mean, all those guys are going to have to sacrifice. You saw it with the Celtics in 2008 when they got together. You saw it a little bit with the Miami Heat when they first got together. You see with the Spurs, you got to sacrifice when you got a lot of people. As we talked with Rey Rey, there's only one basketball. And until they figure out a way to change that rule, there's always going to be one basketball.
Well, what are you going to do if you're the Phoenix Suns?
You're going to pray that you draft somebody late in the first, second round who turns out to be a Tony Parker or whatever the case may be.
But the pieces, there's a couple pieces there, like we said. Gortat, solid player. But, like we said, to be in the upper echelons of teams in either conference, you've got to have a superstar. There's not anyone on this team I think is really even close to that level.
Who leads the team in scoring? Beasley off the bench?
Could be Beasley, could be Gortat.
I see a lot of 14-point scorers on this team. I really do. I think Scola can average 12 to 14 points. I see Beasley's going to be in that same range. Channing Frye's going to be in that range. This team might have 4 or 5 double-digit scorers, but they're all 10, 12, in that range.
And that'll probably be the range of the wins that they have, too.
You think they're going to pull, Bobcat-type stats?
Nah, probably not that bad. They'll win some games with the talent that they have, and they've got youth from a lot of these different guys, too.
Here's a money question. Do they win a single game against either LA team this year?
Possibly. I could see them taking one in Phoenix against the Clippers. I think LA trounces all over. I refer to them as LA even though there are two teams in LA, but the Lakers, I think, trounce all over them.
Can we call the Clippers the Los Angeles of Anaheim Clippers?
I'd love to do that. Staples Center 2, Frankie Muniz's favorite team. But it will be interesting. The Dwight Howard versus Goran Dragic matchup, they were together in Orlando.
Speaking of Frankie Muniz.
Ooh, more Frankie Muniz talk. I like it.
Is he still driving that crappy Volkswagen Jetta that he bought from Fast and Furious, the white car, the worst car you could buy from that movie?
Yeah, I don't know how far I can go into the life and times of Frankie Muniz here.
Life and Times of Tim is a fantastic show.
Yes, it is.
But no, Life and Times of Frankie Muniz is not a good show. It doesn't exist. But let's get back to the Suns. I love their jerseys. I love the uniforms. I love the city. We've never been. Stadium sounds fun. Speaking of, they're looking for a new mascot, I hear. Looking for a new gorilla.
Really? I might sign up for that one.
I know.
I've always wanted to be a mascot. I think I'd be pretty good.
You should have tried out for Lucky up here in Boston.
I know. There was one time I almost did when I was at UMass Amherst. I was almost Sam the Minuteman. I had a chance. I knew the kid who was the understudy, and he knew that the guy who actually was the Minuteman was going to be sick one day, and he was probably going to have to do it. He's like, I don't know if I can. I got a big exam. And I was like, dude, I could be that backup, your backup. Let me be the third string Sam. I will do it. But it turns out the kid was able to make the commitment. So that was unfortunate.
You do not sign up for that commitment if you cannot do it. And
exactly.
Just so the people who are wondering, that's University of Massachusetts in Amherst.
Yeah.
For those West Coast listeners who are like, what the hell is this kid talking about?
We were talking about mascots. We're waiting for our guest to get here. I thought I'd throw that in there. A nice little story. I thought it was going to be. I was ready to do it. It was the basketball game. I was pumped. But again, that's neither here nor there. I apologize for all of the digressions that I go on.
Let's go back to Shannon Brown.
I'd love to.
What's his upside? Like, do you see him being a 15-point scorer, or do you see him still being a specialist and kind of an athletic specialist is what I like to call him?
He's always been the guy that comes out of nowhere. You're not expecting him to do anything because he's not playing a lot of minutes, but then he'll make a huge play.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, Shannon Brown out of nowhere. If only he could get a bunch of minutes. Maybe on this team they give him that chance. I think, like I said, he's going to be competing for minutes with Wesley Johnson, so that'll be interesting to see. But I think if you gave Shannon Brown a lot of minutes, he probably could put up 15 a game. Yeah. He's got the talent. He can shoot from the outside. He can slash a little bit. He can handle the ball. And he can get garbage points as well. Yeah. Getting offensive rebounds, put-back dunks. He's super athletic and can jump very high, as we know. I see him as a guy who could possibly do that if he got the minutes. He really never has, though. We don't really have much of a sample size with him.
I will say this Phoenix Suns team is going to get a lot of garbage minutes. I see a lot of teams beating them out within the first, 3 quarters. And, without further ado, thank you for joining us, Michael, because we have been filling this team, and we have so many questions about Jermaine O'Neal that we just got to get it off our chest. We have Michael Schwartz from Valley of the Suns joining us. How you doing, Michael?
I'm doing great. I'm getting ready to come back home.
Oh, nice. So we're ready to get on to the Phoenix Suns a little more. We just spent about 20 minutes talking about them, and you might want to re-listen to it because you might have some laughs and you might want to slap us in the face or some of our comments, but we're going to go with it right away, and we're going to have a funny one, start it lighthearted. Jermaine O'Neal talked about joining a championship team and then proceeded to sign with the Phoenix Suns. What are your expectations on Jermaine O'Neal this upcoming year? Do you think he's going to play 10 games, 15 games? How many games do you think he's actually going to suit up for?
You know what? He said this is the best he's felt in 5 years.
Ooh.
And he's a little bit, he went to Germany. He got the orthokine, the Kobe treatment. He's a lot bouncier than he was, or so he says. He said he's able to do things in workouts athletically, like sprints, that he hasn't been able to do in years.
I don't believe it.
You never know if that's just talk. At the same time, you saw that Kobe really was rejuvenated and that it seems like a whole host of NBA players are going over there. So I really do expect him to be better than the guy who was a shell of Jermaine O'Neal these last couple of seasons. That being said, I still see him as the fifth big man once Channing Frye is healthy, and it's nice to have some insurance, especially for such a young team. But, obviously it would be ridiculous to think of him as somebody that you're going to be relying on.
Yeah, and I think you helped me understand better the reason for Jermaine O'Neal wanting to join the Phoenix Suns, because they're going to let him play basketball. What I don't really understand is why Phoenix went out and signed this guy. I'm not really sure if I see the upside in that. They did get a pretty good deal on him considering what he's been paid in the past. But yeah, I'm not really seeing where he fits in on this squad.
Well, as you probably said before, it's a 1-year deal at the veteran minimum, so there's literally no risk whatsoever in the deal. The Suns needed a backup center essentially after they traded Robin Lopez to the Hornets. So they were going to sign a 7-footer. The only question was who, and J.O. is by far the player with the most experience and probably the best player left. We were looking through the scrap heap when we were trying to figure out, okay, so who might this backup center be? Personally, I kind of like Pasenko because he gives the Suns a different mix. He's a different kind of player than the kind of big man that they have. But, that's really what it came down to. They needed a backup center, and Jermaine O'Neal was arguably the best backup center in the market. Clearly the Suns thought so. But,
now,
you're right. It's a young team. By the time the Suns are theoretically good, Jermaine O'Neal is going to be long retired. So I understand from that standpoint.
Now, before you hopped on here, we were trying to hammer out the starting lineup, and, it's really going to depend on the style of play, because they can play a big style of play and they can play a small style of play. Who do you see right now as the starting five for the Phoenix Suns?
I think, obviously, Goran and Gortat are locks for the starting lineup, and I think Beasley's a lock as well.
Ooh.
Then you don't think so?
We didn't have him there. We thought he might be a bench player with Jared Dudley assuming the starting role.
Yeah, I think Dudley's going to be a starter actually, and I think Spola is going to be the other starter. If I had to guess, I think you're going to go Goran and Dudley. They played pretty well together on that bench unit, and I think Dudley is certainly the best player they have that could be a 2-guard. It seems like Beasley's going to be that starting 3, even though he's been better as a 4 throughout his career. At Scola, I don't know how he couldn't start, and then obviously Gortat's going to start. So, they obviously could go different ways at different points in the year. I definitely think Wes Johnson's going to be a bench player. You could put Shannon in instead of Dudley. Personally, I definitely like Dudley better as the starter.
I agree with you there, and we were talking about that, who you want to go with. But talk to us a little bit about Wesley Johnson, because you mentioned his name. What kind of expectations do you have from him this upcoming season, and what part of his games are you looking to see improvement on?
Well, obviously the shooting, that's the biggest thing. He looks like a good shooter. He was a great shooter in Summer League, but he's been a horrid shooter in the NBA. So you just wonder if it was confidence. You wonder what the deal was, because this guy is supposed to be, to some degree, I was going to say lights out, then I realized how ridiculous that was when talking about Wesley Johnson, but he should be a much better shooter than he was. He's been a terrible shooter. There's no two ways about it, and I think he could and should be a lot better in that area. And then, obviously, he's a pretty good transition player. That's the one thing that he does do pretty well. We know he can't handle the ball. We know he's not the best passer. He's not going to really move the ball a whole lot. But and then also on the defensive end of the floor, he's at least got the athleticism to help on that end. So, I mean, the Suns are essentially taking a one-year flyer on the guy. I'm sure they're going to decline his option and make him a free agent next year. But, you just never know with a guy like that. He was the 4th overall pick for a reason, even if we haven't really seen that reason quite yet. So, it's kind of no risk there. And if he plays well, maybe the Suns bring him back at a decent rate.
A guy who really interests me on this roster, and I really liked him a lot at UNC. I think he's a smart player. I think I really liked Kendall Marshall's ability to distribute the ball there. And I really do think that he has the potential to be a solid backup point guard on this squad, even in his rookie season. What are you expecting from Kendall Marshall? Do you think he'll have any role on this team? I mean, you've got Goran Dragic, obviously, is going to be the starter here. Sebastian Telfair might have some sort of role. What do you see coming out of Kendall Marshall, the rookie this year? And do you think he can play a big role in the team?
Yeah, that's really interesting with Bassey because he played incredibly well there in April. He was pretty horrid at the beginning of the season. The first couple months in particular, he was just awful. But he was a really decent player and really helped the bench play well down the stretch. So I think he's going to, at least in the beginning, factor into this thing. I think he's going to make Kendall Marshall's life absolutely miserable in training camp and in preseason, and going to do everything he can to win that role because, Bassey's been moving around throughout his career. He knows, one more flop and that could be it for him. But in the end, I do think Kendall Marshall is going to win that backup point guard role, even if it's not originally. And, yeah, I mean, he's such a smart player. I think he's going to run that bench really well, and that's something the Suns never really had during the Nash era, except for 2010 when Dragic was pretty good. That's a good backup point guard. So you could see him potentially meshing with that group eventually. I think it's going to take time. I think the first couple of months could be pretty brutal as he adjusts to the game and learns when he has to score. He can't just do what he did at Carolina, which is basically pass every single time. The Suns bench isn't exactly Carolina's starting lineup from last year compared to the competition. So I think he is going to eventually factor, but I think it might be kind of slow at first, and we might even have some of Bassey at the beginning of the season.
Now, you mentioned Channing Frye a little while ago and recovering from injury. What is his timetable, and what do you expect of him this upcoming season with this team, kind of being the veteran presence?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure his timetable. He had off-season surgery on that shoulder that he injured in the third-to-last game of the year against Denver, and I just know the Suns don't expect him necessarily to be ready from the start. But I'm sure certainly by December he'll be back, and for all we know, he's making quicker progress than expected. He could be back from the start of the year. And, yeah, I mean, he's an interesting player. I think he's going to be the backup center when things are all said and done, and there's a lot of ways you could go with him. He could even still start at the 4, but he was really good in that backup center role back on the 2010 team. Obviously, completely different squad. There's no Nash, Amari, and Jay Rich anymore to make a good bench matter. But he's tough. He's going to shoot those threes, and that's tough for backup centers to come out and defend. It's weird you say veteran presence because I guess he is kind of on this team now. He is a veteran presence. He's always seemed like a young guy to me, especially when he started with the Suns. But he's going to do what he does. He's going to space the floor, and I think as a center and no longer being a backup power forward, that could be a fairly effective role for him. I still don't know how many minutes he's going to get. It's going to be really tough with that logjam with all the big men, and then with Beasley in theory being better as a 4 instead of a 3.
Yeah, and you mentioned how much this team has changed since then, since 2010, and even since last season. The Nash era, as you said, is over. He's gone. He's in L.A. now. What confuses me here is, with Nash gone, where's the identity of this team? When Nash was there, the Phoenix Suns were Steve Nash. Now that he's gone, and Jacob mentioned this before you came on, where's the marketability here? Who gets marketed on this Phoenix Suns team, and where's their identity?
Who's printed on the tickets?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's the question that we don't have an answer to. That's what I've been wondering. Most they don't have anyone making even $8 million a season, which is nice, and that nobody's wildly overpaid. But at the same time, there is no. You're absolutely right. There is no marketability. There is no stars. I mean, that's one of the reasons they wanted Dragic back. At least he's a popular player. He's a breakout kind of guy. But I mean, the two names you'd have to throw out really are Goran Dragic and Marcin Gortat. I mean, I would say the face of the franchise right now is Marcin Gortat, which is to say there is no face of the franchise. And you know, you never know. Maybe Beasley finally breaks out and he kind of becomes that guy. I know that seems pretty doubtful. But, I mean, that's just where this team's at, and they understand that. That's why they went after Eric Gordon. And in that pitch to him, they said, the cornerstone, you're the cornerstone of our team if you come here. And that would be absolutely right. So, yeah, the answer is they don't have one. There's no two ways about it, and that's something that's going to have to happen, you know, in the upcoming off seasons, either through the draft, being as bad as some people think, or through free agency. As far as the style, I think it's still going to be relatively similar. I think there's still going to be up-tempo, shoot some Dragic thrived in that kind of style back when he was here. So I think you're going to still see a lot of that, still some pick and rolls. But, it's going to be really weird without 13 out there spearheading it. And, you know, it might take a little while to figure out what exactly this team is.
Man, if Marcin Gortat is the face of the Phoenix Suns, then the Phoenix Suns have quite the schnoz on them.
That's very true.
He's waiting for that joke. Now, you mentioned Eric Gordon, and it is a shame that they weren't able, well, I should say it's a shame that the Hornets matched it, which everyone knew they were going to. But, you know, I think he would have fit in real nicely and gave his team an identity. You would have been able to figure out the starting five. We wouldn't have this debate going around who should start the two. You'd have it, and you'd have your main scorer. So my question to you is, who's going to lead this team in scoring? And how many points do you see that player having? Oh, we lost him. He called right back in.
Perfect.
You there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Oh, did you hear that question?
No, I didn't.
Okay, I said, you know, it's a shame they didn't get Eric Gordon because he would have been their, you know, they go-to scorer and, you know, would have led the team in scoring. Now, without him, JJ and I were having this discussion, is who's going to be the main scorer on this team and how many points is that person going to have?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it can be so many guys. I could certainly see it being Goran Dragic. It for sure could be Michael Beasley. He's probably the best pure scorer on the team. Luis Scola could get that, and it could be Gortat. So I think any of those four guys, and in theory, even a guy like Dudley who keeps upping his scoring average, or if you keep, you know, we could keep playing this game. Shannon Brown averaged something like 15, 16 points as a starter last year. So I think that is going to be the range. Something like a 14 to 15 will probably be the leading scorer. And on the bright side of that, I think there will be a number of guys in double figures. I think all those guys will score at least 12 to 14 points, something like that. But there is no number one guy. It's really anyone's guess. I guess if I had to pick anyone, I would say Beasley because he's got the 19 points a game season on his resume, so we know he can be that leading scorer type of guy. But yeah, it's really anyone's guess.
Yeah, tough call on that one. You mentioned Luis Scola. He interests me on this team for a number of reasons. One of them being his age. He hasn't been in the league for a long time, but he has been playing basketball for a long time, you know, overseas and all of that. On this team, does he get a whole ton of minutes like he was playing with the Rockets, or do they scale him back a little bit because they want to, you know, play a lot of their younger guys? Because this is a younger team, one that's not going to really make any waves in the playoff picture anytime soon. Where does he fit in, and what's the future of him with the Phoenix Suns?
Well, I think the future is the Suns can't trade him until July 1st because you can't trade amnesty guys for a year. And I think on July 1st, they'll be fielding some phone calls. Because, I mean, when you look at his contract, the guy's making less than $5 million a year. He's still a steal at the level he's playing at if you watch the Olympics and how well he played for Argentina. It's basically they were able to get an asset for a very cheap price is the way I see it. And at the same time, he's a very good basketball player. So the minutes distribution is going to be something really interesting to watch. In particular, you don't want to see Markieff Morris not getting minutes because they need to play 32-year-old Luis Scola. So that's the one thing that I fear, and I don't know how it's going to work out. I'm sure Scola is going to expect to be playing major minutes, but some of these guys in the front court are going to have to sacrifice. Channing's used to playing as many minutes as he can handle as well, and obviously Gortat's going to be playing a ton of minutes. So if somebody's going to be sacrificing some of that time, and it could end up being Spola, but I'd be surprised if he didn't play at least close to 30 minutes a night.
Yeah, the Louis Scola thing interests me because I was shocked when the Rockets amnested him, and then I was shocked when not many teams were bidding for him. I mean, I don't know if there's something. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I could explain that. I mean, you had to have a certain amount of space under the
cap
under the cap, and the way his contract worked, because he had about $10 million of non-guaranteed money in his third year, that was your minimum bid, spread over 3 years. So if you didn't have $3 to $4 million worth of cap space, you couldn't bid. And at that point in the off season, not too many teams could do that. The Suns could, the Cavs could. The Cavs were rumored to be very interested, and the Mavericks could have as well. But their bids fell short. There were a couple other teams, I'm sure, that had cap space, Bobcats and teams like that, that weren't as interested in him. But basically, the teams that could use him weren't able to bid for him. So the Suns had cap space, and they wanted to use it in some way, especially after they weren't able to get Eric Gordon. So that's basically what it came down to, and I think they just saw it as a good deal that, hey, if we can get Louis Scola for 3 years at less than $15 million a year, you really have to do it.
Certainly. And, Michael, we have one last question for you. This is a question that we've been asking all of our guests here during these division previews, and that will be no exception here. Even though the Phoenix Suns aren't exactly, like we've been talking about, a playoff caliber team at this time, we've been asking everybody, where do you see the ceiling for this team this year, and what do you see as the worst-case scenario? Like, could they possibly somehow snag an 8 seed, and could they end up, being the team with the most balls in the lottery?
Yeah, I could even see them snagging a 7 seed potentially. I mean, I think there's a lot of talent on the roster. Like, no headlining star, no question about that. But if the best case scenarios turn out true, if Goran Dragic takes the next step in his development, if Gortat's still good without Nash, if Beasley leading scorer and putting up 19 to 20 points a game, if Jared Dudley takes another step in his development, if Wesley Johnson starts to fulfill a little bit of his potential, and if pieces mesh together, it could be a fast, young, athletic, exciting team with a decent bit of depth. I didn't even mention Marquise Morris there. So I would say, again, what's the potential for a team like that? Probably not better than a 7 seed, but as the ceiling, and then obviously we all know what the floor is if you've seen some of these preseason predictions. I mean, they really could be one of the teams with the top 2 or 3 largest amount of lottery balls. If Beasley, I think Beasley is one of the biggest keys because you really don't know which way he's going to go. He really could be a star. This could be what he needs, this change of scenery, or he could continue to be disappointing. But, yeah, the pieces might not mesh. You might have guys like Scola wondering why he's not getting more time, and you could see by the trading deadline this team just being completely out of it and end up being one of the worst teams in the entire NBA.
It's funny.
It's kind of sad that, yeah.
I was going to say, it's kind of funny we're talking about how Beasley can be disappointing as a 19-point scorer.
Yeah.
All right,
I mean, that's really we all know what the floor is, but I do certainly see that ceiling being a playoff team.
I'm sure the Suns fans appreciate that optimism that you have there.
I just want to say I like that answer a lot. We've been asking this question, like I said, to all the guests we have, and this is the first time, and thank you for this, Michael, that we went through all of the potential things that can go the right way. That's what I've been looking for with this answer. If every single thing goes the right way, where can we land?
Yeah, and it's great when that's a 7 seed.
Yeah,
exactly. Michael, you've been fantastic. We'll have to get you back on when we actually have some games to analyze, and maybe when Jermaine O'Neal, gets hurt, we'll bring you on and we'll discuss that, and his finger or whatever jams, and he calls it a career.
For sure, I'd be happy to.
All right, you've been fantastic,
lot,
Michael. Everybody listen to Michael. He is the best Suns blog out there, Valley of the Suns, part of the True Hoop Network.
Twitter account is @Valley of the Suns.
Awesome stuff there, and he's my Suns go-to guy out there. Fantastic stuff all around, but that wraps up our Pacific. We got about 2 playoff teams, maybe 3.
Yeah.
Maybe 3. Michael kind of shed some light on there.
It's possible.
It was very generous of him to hop on and talk to us while he's at an airport heading home. And, we wish him a safe flight, and we wish his Suns make the playoffs. We really do.
That would be nice. And what better way to finish out the Pacific Division than the Phoenix Suns.
The Phoenix Suns, one of my favorite teams growing up. I loved them when they were in their heyday, and they had the Marion and the Mare and Nash and all that.
And you could put in
stuff.
that code in NBA Jam to be the Gorilla. Oh, it was awesome.
It was the best, absolute best. But that would do it for us here, and we have no idea what division we're covering next. It will be an Eastern Conference. We're going back and forth. Just don't know which one yet. It was going to be a surprise.
Hey-o.
And just so you know, we're not covering one division. We're not covering two.
All of them.
But we also know you three kings came down here to win championships. Not one, championships.
Not two.
LeBron, tell us about that.
Not two, not three, not four, not five, not six, not seven. Hey, and when I say that, I really believe it. I'm not just up here blowing smoke at none of these fans, because that's not what I'm about. I'm about business, and we believe we can win multiple championships if we take care of business and do it the right way.
And we believe that we can cover every single team in the NBA in these NBA previews. Thank you, everyone, for listening to NBA Unplugged. Of course, this is brought to you by theprobasketballtalk.com. Thank you, Eric Pincus, for joining us. Thank you, Rey Rey from the Noble Past. And thank you, Michael Schwartz from Valley of the Suns. This has been NBA Unplugged. I am James Bucklin for Jacob Noble. We wish you the best, and we'll see you next week, next Thursday. Hey-o!